Ever feel like everyone else has figured out the cheat codes to life while you're still playing on hard mode? The audiobook, Life is Now on Easy Mode, How to Transform Your Life Using Simple Daily Actions, reveals why personal growth has never been more accessible than today. You'll discover a deceptively simple approach that yields extraordinary results in your skills, mindset, and relationships without overwhelming your schedule. Miss these insights, and you'll continue struggling unnecessarily, while others leverage modern advantages to effortlessly achieve what once required decades of grueling effort. Before we go on, I invite you to download the free executive summary of this book, which contains the key ideas and takeaways of each chapter. Studies show that engaging with content in multiple formats significantly enhances learning and retention. Click the first link in the description to claim your free executive summary and maximize your learning potential. It's free for now, but it won't be forever, so make sure to grab it while you can. Chapter 1, Rare Opportunity. The alarm blares at 5:30 a.m. Sarah groans, reaching for her phone to silence it. In the darkness of her bedroom, she opens a language learning app and spends 10 minutes practicing Spanish phrases. Next, she opens her journal app, typing a quick reflection on yesterday's accomplishments and today's priorities. By 6 a.m., she's lacing up her running shoes, guided by a fitness app that tracks her morning jog. Before breakfast, she's already invested in 3 areas of personal growth, all from the comfort of her home, all within 30 minutes, all at virtually no cost. 200 years ago, this scenario would have been impossible. Learning a language required expensive tutors or rare books. Fitness guidance meant hiring a personal trainer or joining an exclusive club. And finding a community of like-minded individuals pursuing similar goals, you'd need to live in a major city and have the right connections. We are living in an unprecedented era of human history, one where the barriers to self-improvement have crumbled, where knowledge flows freely, and where support for personal growth is abundant. This isn't just a slight improvement over the past, it's a fundamental shift that has placed extraordinary power in the hands of ordinary people. The playing field hasn't just been leveled, it's been tilted in your favor. Think about what it meant to learn a new skill just 50 years ago. If you wanted to master photography, you'd need to purchase expensive equipment, buy books or magazines that might already be outdated, take classes at specific times that might conflict with your work schedule, and spend money developing film just to see if your techniques were improving. The feedback loop was slow, expensive, and often discouraging. Today, you can watch tutorials from world-class photographers for free, join online communities where experts critique your work, use digital cameras that provide instant feedback, and learn advanced techniques without leaving your living room. What once took years can now be accomplished in months. What once cost thousands now costs hundreds, or even nothing at all. This transformation extends far beyond just learning new skills. Consider the pursuit of mental well-being. In the past, therapeutic approaches were stigmatized, expensive, and accessible only to those in certain geographic areas. Today, mindfulness practices, cognitive behavioral techniques, and emotional regulation strategies are freely available through apps, videos, and online communities. The democratization of mental health resources means that powerful tools for psychological growth are now within everyone's reach. The same pattern repeats across virtually every domain of human development. Physical fitness, thousands of free workout routines, nutrition guides, and training programs are available instantly. Career advancement, online courses, certifications, and networking platforms have made professional development more accessible than ever. Creative pursuits, digital tools, instructional content, and global audiences await anyone with a spark of imagination. What makes this moment truly special isn't just the availability of resources, it's the convergence of several factors that together create a perfect environment for personal transformation. First, we have information abundance. The internet has become humanity's collective brain, storing virtually all of our accumulated knowledge and making it searchable in milliseconds. This means that whatever you want to learn, whatever skill you wish to develop, the information exists and is likely freely available. The limitation is no longer access to information, but rather your ability to curate and apply it. Consider that just 30 years ago, if you wanted to learn about a specialized topic, you might need to visit a university library, navigate complex catalog systems, and hope they had the resources you needed. If they didn't, you might write letters to experts, wait weeks for responses, or travel to institutions that had the materials you sought. Today, that same research might take minutes instead of months. This information abundance means that self-education has never been more powerful. You can essentially create your own curriculum, drawing from the world's top experts and institutions. Harvard, Stanford, MIT, these elite universities now offer free courses online. World-class experts share their knowledge through blogs, podcasts, and videos. The gatekeepers of knowledge have been bypassed, and the doors to learning have been thrown wide open. Second, we have unprecedented global connectivity. Previous generations were limited by geography. Your growth was constrained by the people and resources available in your immediate vicinity. Today, you can connect with mentors, peers, and communities from around the world who share your interests and goals. This connectivity means that no matter how niche your passion or how specific your challenge, you can find others who understand and can offer guidance. Struggling with a rare health condition? There's likely an online support group. Interested in an obscure hobby? There's probably a forum dedicated to it. Looking for accountability in your fitness journey? Virtual workout partners await. The power of this connectivity cannot be overstated. Humans are social creatures, and our growth has always been accelerated by community. Now, instead of being limited to the few dozen or 100 people in your immediate circle, you can tap into global networks of thousands or millions who share your aspirations. The encouragement, knowledge sharing, and accountability these communities provide can be the difference between giving up and breaking through. Third, technology has created tools specifically designed to facilitate personal growth. These aren't just passive repositories of information. They're interactive systems that can track your progress, provide personalized feedback, and adapt to your needs. Want to build better habits? Apps can send you reminders, track your streaks, and celebrate your milestones. Need to manage your time more effectively? Digital tools can analyze your patterns, block distractions, and optimize your schedule. Trying to improve your writing? Software can analyze your prose, suggest improvements, and help you develop your voice. These tools function as external scaffolding for your internal growth. They reduce friction, provide immediate feedback, and make it easier to maintain momentum. They're like having a personal coach, available 24/7, dedicated to your development. Fourth, there has been a profound cultural shift toward valuing personal growth. Self-improvement is no longer seen as self-indulgent or unnecessary. It's recognized as essential in a rapidly changing world. Companies invest in employee development, schools teach growth mindset, and the pursuit of continuous learning is celebrated rather than questioned. This cultural shift means that when you embark on a journey of self-improvement, you're swimming with the current rather than against it. Friends, family, and colleagues are more likely to support your efforts. Resources are more readily available. The stigma that might once have been attached to seeking help or admitting the need for growth has largely dissipated. Finally, the traditional barriers that once made personal growth difficult have been systematically dismantled. Geographic limitations? Learn from anywhere with an internet connection. Financial constraints? Access free or low-cost alternatives to expensive programs. Time restrictions? Fit learning into the margins of your day with mobile apps and asynchronous courses. These advantages combine to create what can only be described as easy mode for personal development. The playing field isn't just level, it's tilted in your favor. The question is no longer, can I access what I need to grow, but rather, will I take advantage of the unprecedented resources available to me? This doesn't mean that personal growth is effortless. It still requires commitment, consistency, and courage. But the friction has been reduced to an unprecedented degree. The wind is at your back. The conditions are optimal, The opportunity is rare. Consider how this compares to previous eras. In medieval times, books were so precious that they were often chained to library desks to prevent theft. Knowledge was literally under lock and key. During the Renaissance, learning a craft meant a 7-year apprenticeship under a single master. Your growth was constrained by what one person could teach you. Even in the 20th century, self-improvement often required significant financial investment, geographic relocation, or access to exclusive institutions. Today, these limitations have largely evaporated. The democratization of knowledge, the globalization of community, and the development of technology have created a perfect storm of opportunity. We are living in what future historians may well describe as a golden age of personal development, a time when the tools for transformation were more accessible than ever before. This rare opportunity extends beyond just individual growth. As more people take advantage of these resources, we see a network effect that further enhances the environment. More knowledge is shared, more communities form, more tools are developed. The ecosystem becomes increasingly rich and supportive. The implications of this shift are profound. In previous eras, personal growth was often a luxury available primarily to the privileged, those with money, time, and connections. Today, it's becoming a universal possibility. This doesn't mean that all inequalities have been erased, far from it, but the gap has narrowed significantly, and the trajectory is promising. For you, reading these words right now, the message is clear. You have access to resources that the greatest minds of previous generations could only dream of. You can learn from the world's experts, connect with global communities, and utilize sophisticated tools, all from wherever you happen to be sitting. This isn't just a nice convenience, it's a historic opportunity. The barriers that might once have held you back have been reduced or removed. The excuses that might once have seemed valid have lost their power. The path forward is clearer and more accessible than ever before. Of course, this opportunity comes with responsibility. With greater access comes the need for greater discernment. In a world of information abundance, the ability to separate signal from noise becomes crucial. With so many options available, the need to focus and avoid distraction becomes essential. With so many paths open to you, the importance of choosing wisely becomes paramount. But these are high-quality problems to have. They're the challenges of abundance rather than scarcity. They're the dilemmas that come with freedom rather than constraint. As we move forward in this book, we'll explore specific strategies for taking advantage of this rare opportunity. We'll look at how small daily actions can compound into remarkable transformations. We'll examine how consistent habits can lead to extraordinary results. We'll discover how the right mindset can turn obstacles into stepping stones. But for now, take a moment to appreciate the historical context of your journey. You're not just embarking on a path of personal growth. You're doing so during a time when the conditions for success are more favorable than they've ever been. You're not just seeking to improve yourself. You're doing so with tools and resources that previous generations could scarcely imagine. This is your rare opportunity. The playing field is tilted in your favor. The wind is at your back. The question is, what will you do with this advantage? In the next chapter, we'll explore the remarkable power of small, consistent actions, how tiny daily habits can compound over time to produce extraordinary results. You'll discover why consistency trumps intensity, and how the principle of compounding applies not just to financial investments, but to personal growth as well. The path to transformation isn't about dramatic overnight changes. It's about the accumulated power of simple daily practices. And in our modern world, those practices have never been easier to implement. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2, Compounding Power. Have you ever watched a bamboo plant grow? For the first 4 years after planting, you'll see almost nothing happening above ground. A tiny shoot might emerge, but growth appears minimal at best. You might wonder if the plant is even alive. Then, in the 5th year, something remarkable happens. The bamboo suddenly shoots upward, growing up to 90 feet in just 6 weeks. But here's the secret. During those seemingly inactive 4 years, the bamboo wasn't dormant. It was developing an elaborate root system underground, invisible to observers, but essential for its eventual explosive growth. Every day, small cellular changes were occurring. Every day, the foundation was being strengthened. Every day, the potential for dramatic growth was building. Your personal growth follows a similar pattern. The most powerful transformations rarely happen overnight. They're the result of small, consistent actions that compound over time, often invisibly at first, until a breakthrough moment when everyone else notices what you've been building all along. We live in a culture obsessed with immediate results. We want overnight success stories, dramatic weight loss transformations, and instant mastery of new skills. This impatience leads many people to attempt massive changes all at once, only to burn out quickly and revert to old patterns. They plant the bamboo seed, don't see immediate growth, and abandon the garden before the miracle can occur. What if there was a more reliable approach to transformation? What if the secret to extraordinary results wasn't found in extraordinary actions, but in ordinary actions performed with extraordinary consistency? Consider 2 hypothetical individuals. The first makes a bold New Year's resolution to completely transform their life. They commit to an intense daily regimen, waking at 5 a.m., exercising for 2 hours, reading for an hour, and completely overhauling their daily routine. They attack this plan with enthusiasm for 2 weeks, then miss a day due to exhaustion. Feeling like they've failed, they abandon the entire program. The second person takes a different approach. They commit to just 5 minutes of exercise each morning. Just 5 minutes, no more is required. Some days they do only those 5 minutes. Other days, once they've started, they feel good and continue for longer. But the commitment remains just 5 minutes. When they miss a day, they simply return to their 5 minutes the next day. No drama, no sense of failure, just a return to the small daily habit. After a year, who do you think has made more progress? The first person's 2-week burst of intense activity, or the second person's year of modest but consistent effort? The answer might surprise those caught in the all-or-nothing mindset that dominates our approach to self-improvement. But it wouldn't surprise mathematicians who understand the extraordinary power of compounding. When we hear the term compound interest, we typically think of finance. Money invested at 10% annual interest doesn't just grow by 10% each year. It grows by an increasing amount as the interest itself begins to generate more interest. After 7 years, your investment doesn't double. It doubles and then some. After 30 years, the growth becomes almost magical, with small initial investments transforming into substantial sums. But what if we applied this same principle to personal development? What if each small improvement you make doesn't just add to your growth, but multiplies it? Let's explore a simple thought experiment. Imagine improving by just 1% each day. That seems modest, almost negligible. Who gets excited about a 1% improvement? But compounded over a year, that 1% daily improvement doesn't lead to a 365% improvement, 1% 365 days. Because of compounding, where each improvement builds on previous improvements, you'd actually end up approximately 37 times better than when you started. Conversely, getting 1% worse each day for a year would leave you at a tiny fraction of your starting point. The same modest rate of change, compounded over time, leads to dramatically different outcomes depending on its direction. This mathematical reality reveals something profound about personal transformation. Small changes, consistently applied, are not just significant, they're exponentially powerful. The key is consistency over intensity. Think about what this means in practical terms. Learning 5 new words in a foreign language each day might not feel impressive, but after a year, that's 1,825 words, enough to hold basic conversations and read simple texts. Doing 5 push-ups daily might seem trivial compared to an intense gym session, but that's 1,825 push-ups over a year, building strength and establishing a consistent exercise habit. The power of this approach lies not just in the accumulation of effort, but in the compound effects that emerge over time. Each small improvement makes the next improvement slightly easier. Each consistent day makes showing up the next day more natural. Each tiny win builds confidence that fuels future wins. But here's where most people go wrong. They underestimate what small actions can accomplish over time, and they overestimate what big actions can accomplish in a short period. We've been conditioned to believe that massive success requires massive action, but this mindset often leads to the cycle of enthusiasm followed by burnout that prevents lasting change. The alternative, small, consistent actions, seems too simple, too anticlimactic to be effective. It lacks the emotional rush of dramatic change. It doesn't make for exciting before and after photos, but it works. The truth is that most overnight successes are actually the result of years of small, consistent efforts that suddenly become visible. The author who bursts onto the scene with a bestseller has usually been writing daily for years. The musician who becomes an overnight sensation has typically practiced for thousands of hours. The entrepreneur whose business suddenly takes off has often been building and iterating for a long time. They all understood something crucial. Momentum is more powerful than motivation. Motivation is a fickle friend. It comes and goes based on mood, circumstances, and a host of factors beyond our control. Relying on motivation to drive major life changes is like relying on the weather for your travel plans. You'll frequently find yourself stranded. Momentum, on the other hand, is more reliable. It's the force that keeps an object in motion once it's moving. In personal development, momentum is what makes continuing a habit easier than starting it. It's what turns deliberate actions into automatic behaviors. It's what transforms difficult changes into your new normal. Building momentum starts with actions so small they seem almost trivial. Want to become a runner? Don't start with a 5-mile run. Start with putting on your running shoes and stepping outside for 1 minute. Want to become a writer? Don't commit to writing for 2 hours. Start with writing a single sentence each day. These tiny actions might seem too small to matter, but they serve a crucial purpose. They get you moving. And once you're in motion, physics is on your side. It becomes easier to stay in motion than to stop and start again. When you commit to writing one sentence, you'll often find yourself writing a paragraph or a page once you've begun. When you commit to 1 minute of running, you'll frequently continue for 10 minutes or more. But even on days when you only do the minimum, you're still building momentum, still reinforcing the neural pathways that make the habit more automatic, still maintaining your identity as someone who does this thing daily. This is how small actions compound. Each day you show up, you're not just adding another repetition to your total, you're making the next repetition slightly easier, slightly more automatic, slightly more likely to happen. You're building momentum that will eventually carry you forward with less effort. But there's a catch, and it's one that derails many people on their journey of transformation. Progress from small, consistent actions isn't always immediately visible. In fact, there's often a period where you're putting in the work but seeing little to no results, what we might call the plateau of latent potential. Imagine an ice cube sitting in a room at 25 degrees. You start raising the temperature, 26 degrees, 27 degrees, 28 degrees. Nothing visible happens to the ice. At 29 degrees, still solid ice. At 30 degrees, 31 degrees, no apparent change. Someone observing might conclude that raising the temperature has no effect on ice. But then you reach 32 degrees, and suddenly the ice begins to melt. The transformation becomes visible, even though the work of raising the temperature 1 degree at a time had been happening all along. Personal transformation works the same way. You might exercise daily for weeks without seeing changes in your body. You might practice a skill daily without noticeable improvement in your performance. You might meditate daily without feeling significantly calmer. During this plateau phase, it's easy to get discouraged and give up just before the breakthrough would have occurred. Understanding the plateau of latent potential is crucial for maintaining consistency. When you know that progress is happening beneath the surface, that you're building the root system before the bamboo shoots upward, you can continue your small daily actions with faith that the results will eventually become visible. This patience is easier to maintain when you focus on systems rather than goals. A goal is the specific outcome you want to achieve: losing 20 pounds, writing a book, learning a language. A system is the process that leads to those results: daily exercise, daily writing, daily language practice. Goals are important for setting direction, but systems are what actually produce results. When you focus primarily on the goal, you're in a constant state of failing to achieve it until the moment you succeed. This can be demoralizing and can make it harder to maintain consistency. When you focus on the system, the small daily actions, you succeed every time you perform the action. This provides regular positive reinforcement that helps maintain momentum. Moreover, goals are temporary, while systems can be permanent. Once you achieve a goal, you need a new one to keep moving forward. But a good system can continue generating results indefinitely. The person who builds a system of daily exercise will continue getting fitter long after they've achieved their initial weight loss goal. This brings us to another key insight: consistency beats intensity nearly every time. Imagine two people learning to play the piano. The first practices for 3 hours every Sunday, a total of 3 hours per week. The second practices for 25 minutes every day, a total of 2.9 hours per week. Despite putting in slightly less total time, the second person will almost certainly progress more quickly. Why? Because daily practice keeps the neural pathways active and developing, while the once-a-week approach allows skills to deteriorate between sessions. The same principle applies across domains. Walking 30 minutes daily produces better fitness results than running a marathon once a year. Writing 200 words daily produces more work and skill development than a 10,000-word burst once a month. Meditating for 5 minutes daily creates more mental calm than a weekend meditation retreat every quarter. Consistency creates compound growth in ways that intensity simply cannot. It builds habits that become part of your identity. It prevents the backsliding that occurs during long gaps between intense efforts. It makes the activity sustainable over the long term. This is why the most successful people in any field tend to have daily practices. They understand that showing up consistently, even if just for a short time, yields better results than occasional heroic efforts. But how do you ensure this consistency? How do you make daily actions sustainable when life gets busy, motivation wanes, or obstacles arise? The key is to make your habits so small that they're almost impossible to skip. B.J. Fogg, a behavior scientist at Stanford, calls these tiny habits, actions so minimal that they require almost no motivation or effort to complete. Want to start a meditation practice? Begin with taking 3 deep breaths. Want to get fit? Commit to a single push-up. Want to learn a language? Pledge to learn 1 new word. These commitments might seem ridiculously small, but that's precisely the point. They're so easy that you can do them even on your worst days, when you're tired, busy, or unmotivated. And maintaining the consistency of the habit is more important than the immediate results of any single day's effort. On many days, you'll do more than the minimum. Once you've started your single push-up, you might continue and do 10. But knowing that only 1 is required removes the psychological barrier to beginning. It eliminates the "I don't have time" or "I don't have energy" excuses that often derail consistency. This approach also addresses perfectionism, which can be a major obstacle to consistent action. Many people operate with an all-or-nothing mindset. If they can't do their full workout, they do nothing. If they can't write for an hour, they write nothing. If they can't clean the entire house, they clean nothing. By establishing a minimum viable action that you commit to no matter what, you shift from perfectionism to consistency. Doing something imperfectly, but consistently, is infinitely more effective than doing nothing perfectly. As these tiny habits become established, you can build on them through a process called habit stacking. attaching new habits to existing ones to create a sequence of positive actions. The formula is simple. After I current habit, I will new habit. For example, after I brush my teeth, I will do one push-up. After I pour my morning coffee, I will write one sentence. After I sit down on the train, I will read one page. This technique leverages the neural pathways of existing habits to establish new ones. The existing habit serves as the trigger or cue for the new behavior, making it more likely to be remembered and executed. Over time, you can build impressive sequences of habits through this method. Your morning routine might evolve from just brushing your teeth to a cascade of positive actions. Brushing teeth, followed by a brief stretch, followed by writing in a gratitude journal, followed by reading a page of a book. Each action triggers the next in a chain reaction of personal development. What makes habit stacking particularly powerful is that it compounds the compounding effect. Not only does each individual habit create compound growth in its specific domain, but the habits also reinforce each other, creating synergistic benefits. For instance, a brief morning meditation might improve your focus for reading, which might give you insights you apply in your journaling, which might improve your self-awareness for better communication throughout the day. The whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. This is how small actions, consistently performed and strategically sequenced, can transform your life, not through sudden dramatic changes, but through the patient accumulation of tiny improvements that compound over time. The beauty of this approach is that it makes personal transformation accessible to everyone. You don't need exceptional willpower, abundant free time, or extraordinary talent. You just need to understand the power of small actions, consistently applied, and have the patience to let compounding work its magic. In a world that celebrates overnight success and dramatic transformations, embracing the slow, steady path of compound growth might seem counterintuitive, but it's actually the most reliable path to lasting change. It's sustainable where intense efforts often aren't. It's accessible where dramatic overhauls often aren't. And most importantly, it works where quick fixes often fail. The compounding power of small daily actions isn't just a strategy for personal development. It's a fundamental principle that governs how sustainable change actually happens. Whether you're building a skill, improving your health, developing a relationship, or pursuing any other form of growth, the same principle applies. Small actions, consistently performed, compound into remarkable results. As we move forward in this book, we'll explore specific applications of this principle. In the next chapter, we'll discover a deceptively simple practice that takes just 5 minutes a day, yet can dramatically enhance your clarity, decision-making, and emotional well-being. This daily ritual has been used by some of history's greatest thinkers, leaders, and creators, and its power lies not in its complexity, but in its consistency. What could 5 focused minutes each day add to your life when applied with the compounding power we've just explored? Chapter 3: Daily Reflection. The mind is a remarkable instrument, capable of solving complex problems, generating creative ideas, and navigating the intricate landscape of human emotions. Yet for all its power, the mind can also become its own worst enemy, racing with anxious thoughts, clouded by indecision, or simply overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information it processes each day. What if there was a simple practice, something you could do in just 5 minutes each day, that could help tame this mental chaos? A practice that could bring clarity to confusion, calm to anxiety, and insight to uncertainty. A practice that requires no special equipment, can be done anywhere, and costs nothing but a few minutes of your time. Throughout history, many of the world's most accomplished individuals have relied on such a practice. Leonardo da Vinci filled thousands of pages with his observations and reflections. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote private notes to himself that later became the philosophical classic Meditations. Benjamin Franklin meticulously tracked his daily activities and thoughts. Marie Curie kept detailed journals of both her scientific work and personal reflections. These historical figures, diverse in their pursuits but united in their achievement, understood something fundamental about human cognition. The mind works better when it has a regular opportunity to process its own contents. They knew that taking time to reflect, to consider experiences, examine thoughts, and articulate feelings wasn't just a pleasant pastime. It was a powerful tool for self-development and mental clarity. Today, modern research has begun to validate what these luminaries intuited. The simple act of reflecting on your thoughts, experiences, and emotions, particularly when done through writing, can have profound effects on your mental well-being, decision-making ability, and overall clarity of thought. But what exactly does this practice entail, and how can something so simple yield such significant results? Imagine your mind as a computer that's been running continuously for days. Multiple programs are open, using memory and processing power. Temporary files have accumulated. The system hasn't had a chance to organize and store information properly. Eventually, operations slow down. Tasks that should be simple become frustratingly difficult. The computer needs to be restarted, updated, and given a chance to sort through its backlog of processes. Daily reflection serves a similar function for your mind. It's a deliberate pause, a chance to close unnecessary mental programs, process accumulated experiences, and prepare for optimal performance moving forward. This reflection can take many forms, but one of the most effective is journaling, the practice of writing down your thoughts, feelings, and experiences. There's something uniquely powerful about translating the abstract contents of your mind into concrete words on a page. The very act of articulation forces clarity. Vague anxieties must be named. Nebulous ideas must take shape. Conflicting feelings must be sorted. The beauty of this practice lies in its simplicity and flexibility. You don't need to write pages of profound prose. You don't need to create literary art or document every minute detail of your day. Even a few sentences, a brief check-in with yourself, can yield significant benefits when done consistently. Think of it as a daily conversation with your wisest self, the part of you that can see beyond immediate reactions and emotions to the bigger picture. This conversation doesn't need to be lengthy to be valuable. Just as a quick check-in with a trusted friend can sometimes provide exactly the perspective you need, a brief session of self-reflection can offer surprising clarity. But the power of this practice isn't just in any single session. Like the compound growth we explored in the previous chapter, the real magic happens through consistency, the accumulated effect of regular reflection over time. Each daily entry might seem modest in isolation, but together they form a powerful tool for self-awareness and growth. Let's explore how this simple practice works to transform your mental landscape, starting with perhaps its most immediate benefit, clearing mental clutter. Your mind is constantly generating thoughts, some useful, many not. Worries about the future, replays of past conversations, random ideas, to-do lists, emotional reactions, all of these swirl together in what can sometimes feel like mental chaos. This internal noise makes it difficult to focus, solve problems, or simply enjoy the present moment. Writing serves as a release valve for this mental pressure. When you transfer thoughts from your mind to the page, you're essentially performing a brain dump, externally storing information that would otherwise occupy mental bandwidth. This process is remarkably similar to how writing a to-do list helps you stop worrying about forgetting tasks. Once captured externally, these thoughts no longer need to be actively maintained in working memory. The result is a sense of mental spaciousness, room to think clearly and focus on what truly matters. Many people report feeling physically lighter after a journaling session, as if a weight has been lifted from their shoulders. This isn't just imagination, it's the tangible relief of reducing cognitive load. This clearing effect is particularly powerful when it comes to rumination, the tendency to repeatedly dwell on negative thoughts or experiences. When troubling thoughts remain unprocessed in your mind, they often play on repeat, draining your mental energy without resolution. Writing interrupts this cycle. It forces you to articulate the concern in specific terms rather than letting it remain as an amorphous worry. Once written, these thoughts often appear more manageable. What seemed overwhelming when bouncing around your head might look surprisingly straightforward when expressed in a few sentences on paper. The very act of expression provides a sense of control. You're no longer at the mercy of your thoughts. You're observing and processing them. This clearing function alone would make daily reflection worthwhile, but its benefits extend far beyond simply decluttering your mind. Perhaps one of the most well-researched benefits is its effect on anxiety and stress. Anxiety thrives in ambiguity. When worries remain vague and undefined, they can seem both overwhelming and unsolvable. Writing forces specificity. It requires you to name what's troubling you, to give shape to your concerns. This specificity is the first step toward addressing anxiety effectively. When you write about your worries, you're also creating psychological distance. Rather than being completely identified with your anxious thoughts, you become their observer. This shift in perspective from being your anxiety to watching your anxiety is subtle but powerful. It's the difference between being caught in a storm and watching a storm from shelter. Research in neuroscience has actually observed this effect in brain activity. When people engage in expressive writing about their concerns, there's a measurable reduction in activity in the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, and increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for rational thinking and emotional regulation. In essence, writing helps shift control from your emotional brain to your rational brain. This doesn't mean your concerns magically disappear when you write about them. Rather, writing changes your relationship to these concerns. They become objects of contemplation rather than overwhelming emotional states. This shift makes anxiety more manageable and less likely to control your behavior. The anxiety-reducing effects of journaling aren't just subjective experiences. They've been measured in concrete outcomes. Studies have found that students who write about their test anxiety before exams perform better than those who don't. People who journal about stressful events show improved immune function. Individuals who reflect on their worries in writing report better sleep quality. These benefits emerge from even brief writing sessions. You don't need to spend an hour analyzing your anxieties. Even 5 minutes of honest reflection can begin to diffuse their power. This makes daily reflection one of the most time-efficient stress management tools available, a perfect example of how small, consistent actions can yield outsized results. Beyond clearing mental clutter and reducing anxiety, regular reflection offers another profound benefit: increased self-awareness. In many ways, this might be its most transformative effect, as self-awareness underlies all other forms of personal growth. Without self-awareness, we're largely at the mercy of unconscious patterns and reactions. We might find ourselves repeatedly making the same mistakes, experiencing the same relationship problems, or falling into the same emotional traps without understanding why. Self-awareness is the flashlight that illuminates these patterns, making conscious change possible. Daily journaling builds this awareness incrementally. Each entry captures a snapshot of your mental and emotional state at a particular moment. Over time, these snapshots form a mosaic that reveals patterns and connections you might otherwise miss. You might notice, for instance, that you tend to feel anxious on Sundays, or that certain people consistently drain your energy, or that you make better decisions in the morning than in the afternoon. These insights emerge not from any single entry, but from the accumulated record of many small observations. This is why consistency matters more than length or depth in your journaling practice. A few sentences written daily will ultimately reveal more about your patterns than occasional lengthy entries. The regular check-in creates a continuous thread of awareness that connects your experiences across time. As you develop this self-awareness, you gain the ability to respond rather than merely react to life's circumstances. You begin to recognize the early signs of unproductive patterns and can choose different paths. You understand your own needs and boundaries more clearly and can honor them more consistently. You become more intentional about how you spend your time and energy. This growing self-awareness naturally leads to better decision-making, another key benefit of regular reflection. Many of our worst decisions come from acting on impulse, emotion, or incomplete information. Reflection creates a space between stimulus and response where wiser choices can emerge. One particularly powerful practice is decision journaling, the habit of writing about important decisions both before and after you make them. Before a decision, writing helps clarify your thinking, surface hidden assumptions, and ensure you're considering all relevant factors. After a decision, recording your reasoning creates accountability and helps you learn from both successes and mistakes. This practice is especially valuable for complex decisions where emotions and competing priorities come into play. Writing forces logical structure onto what might otherwise be a confusing jumble of feelings and considerations. It helps you distinguish between facts and assumptions, between what you know and what you merely believe. Decision journaling also creates a valuable record that you can review over time. Without such documentation, we tend to revise our memories of decision processes in self-serving ways, taking full credit for successes while attributing failures to external factors. An honest record of your thinking at the time of decision prevents this kind of selective memory and enables genuine learning. Even for smaller daily choices, brief reflection can improve your decision quality. Simply asking yourself, why am I choosing this? Or is this aligned with my priorities? Can prevent automatic behaviors that don't serve your larger goals. These micro moments of reflection, when practiced consistently, can significantly alter your life's trajectory. The benefits we've explored so far, mental clarity, reduced anxiety, self-awareness, and better decision-making, are powerful in their own right. But daily reflection offers yet another dimension of transformation through gratitude practice. Our brains have a built-in negativity bias, an evolutionary tendency to notice and remember negative experiences more readily than positive ones. This bias served our ancestors well for survival. Remembering where the predators lurk is more important than remembering where the flowers bloom, but it can undermine our well-being in modern life. Gratitude practice directly counteracts this negativity bias by deliberately directing attention to positive aspects of experience. When you regularly reflect on what you're grateful for, you're essentially retraining your attention system to notice good things that might otherwise slip by unappreciated. This shift in attention isn't just a pleasant mental exercise, it creates tangible changes in emotional experience and even physical health. Research has linked regular gratitude practice to improvements in mood, sleep quality, and immune function, as well as reductions in stress, blood pressure, and symptoms of depression. The practice itself couldn't be simpler. At the end of each day, simply write down 3 things you're grateful for. These don't need to be momentous events. They can be as simple as a moment of connection with a friend, a beautiful sunset, or the comfort of a warm bed. The key is specificity and freshness, trying to identify different things each day that you genuinely appreciate. Over time, this practice creates a profound shift in perception. You begin to move through your days with greater awareness of the good things that surround you. Challenges and difficulties don't disappear, but they're balanced by a growing appreciation for life's gifts, both large and small. This shift toward positivity creates an upward spiral of well-being. Positive emotions broaden your perspective and build personal resources, making you more resilient when facing future challenges. This resilience, in turn, leads to more positive experiences, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of growth. What makes daily reflection particularly powerful is its accessibility. Unlike many personal development practices that require significant time, special equipment, or particular settings, reflection can be done anywhere, anytime, with minimal resources. All you need is a few minutes and something to write with, whether that's a fancy journal, a simple notebook, or a digital device. This accessibility means you can integrate reflection into even the busiest lifestyle. 5 minutes in the morning before starting your day, a brief pause during lunch, a few moments before bed. The specific timing matters less than the consistency of the practice. The simplicity of the practice also means there's a low barrier to entry. You don't need special training or skills to begin. There's no complex technique to master. You simply show up and write honestly about what's on your mind. This simplicity makes it an ideal habit for building momentum in your personal growth journey. But despite its simplicity, many people still struggle to maintain a consistent reflection practice. They start with enthusiasm but find the habit slipping away after a few days or weeks. How can you ensure that your reflection practice sticks? The key is to make the habit as frictionless as possible. Keep your journal somewhere visible and accessible. Set a specific time for your practice and link it to an existing habit. Remember habit stacking from our previous chapter. Start with a very small commitment, even just 1 or 2 minutes, to overcome resistance on difficult days. It also helps to release perfectionism about the practice. There's no right way to journal. Some days your entries might be insightful and profound, other days they might be mundane or scattered. Both are perfectly fine. The value comes from the consistent practice, not the quality of any individual entry. Remember, too, that reflection is a personal practice. Your journal is not for publication or performance. It's a private space for honest exploration. This privacy allows for a level of authenticity that might be difficult in other contexts. You can express thoughts and feelings without concern for how they might be perceived, a rare freedom in our socially connected world. As you develop your reflection practice, you might discover that it becomes more than just a useful tool. It becomes a cherished ritual, a moment of connection with yourself amid the busyness of daily life. Many long-term journal keepers describe their practice as essential to their well-being, a non-negotiable part of their routine that they wouldn't want to live without. This transformation from useful habit to valued ritual happens gradually through the compound effect of daily practice. Each session builds on the last, deepening your relationship with yourself and strengthening your capacity for self-awareness. The beauty of daily reflection lies in its dual nature. It's both immediately beneficial and cumulatively transformative. Each session provides the immediate relief of mental clearing and emotional processing, but over time, these sessions also build into a powerful foundation for personal growth, a growing self-awareness that informs all other aspects of development. In this way, reflection serves as a meta-habit, a practice that enhances all other practices. The clarity, self-awareness, and emotional regulation it develops make you more effective in every other area of life. Your work becomes more focused, your relationships more authentic, your decisions more aligned with your true values. And all of this from just 5 minutes a day, a small investment with extraordinary returns. This is the essence of life on easy mode, identifying the leverage points where minimal effort yields maximal results. Daily reflection is perhaps the ultimate example of this principle, a simple practice with profound ripple effects throughout your life. As we move forward in our exploration of simple daily actions that transform life, we'll build on this foundation of self-awareness. In the next chapter, we'll discover how just 10 minutes a day can dramatically accelerate your learning in any area. Whether you're picking up a new skill, mastering a complex subject, or developing expertise in your field. This micro-learning approach might seem too brief to be effective, but as you'll soon discover, it harnesses hidden principles of how the brain actually acquires and retains knowledge. What could you master if you knew the secret to making every minute of learning count? Chapter 4. Micro-learning. What if the path to mastery wasn't paved with grueling 8-hour study sessions? What if you didn't need to block off entire weekends or take expensive courses to learn something new? What if the most effective way to acquire knowledge and skills was actually much simpler, much more accessible, and much less intimidating than we've been led to believe? Consider this scenario. 2 people decide to learn Spanish. The first commits to an intensive approach, 2-hour classes twice a week, plus weekend study sessions. The second takes a different path, committing to just 10 minutes of focused practice every single day, without exception. After 6 months, who do you think will have made more progress? Conventional wisdom might suggest the first person. After all, they're putting in more total hours, but research and real-world results often tell a different story. The person who practices for just 10 minutes daily frequently outperforms the one who studies in longer, less frequent sessions. This phenomenon points to a powerful approach to learning that has been hiding in plain sight, one that aligns perfectly with our exploration of how small daily actions can transform your life. Throughout history, we've romanticized the image of the dedicated student spending long hours hunched over books or the apprentice logging countless hours of practice. We've internalized the belief that mastery requires massive time investments and Herculean effort. Want to learn piano? That'll be 1 hour of practice every day for years. Want to speak a new language? You'll need to immerse yourself for months. These intimidating prescriptions have prevented countless people from pursuing new knowledge and skills. After all, who has that kind of time in today's busy world? Between work, family, and other responsibilities, the prospect of finding large blocks of time for learning seems impossible for many. But what if this entire approach is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how our brains actually learn? Our educational system was largely designed during the industrial era, with its emphasis on standardization and efficiency. The model of sitting in a classroom for hours at a time, absorbing large volumes of information, then being tested weeks or months later, wasn't created because it's optimal for learning. It was created because it was administratively convenient. Modern cognitive science has revealed that this approach often works against our brain's natural learning mechanisms. Our brains don't absorb information like sponges, soaking up whatever they're exposed to for hours on end. Instead, they build neural connections through repeated exposure and practice, with rest periods in between for consolidation. Think about how a child learns to walk. They don't practice for 8 hours straight. They take a few steps, fall down, rest, try again later, rest again, and repeat this cycle over days and weeks. Each brief attempt builds upon the last, gradually strengthening the neural pathways until walking becomes automatic. This natural learning process, short bursts of focused effort followed by periods of rest and consolidation, is what we're tapping into with the approach we'll explore in this chapter. It's an approach I call micro-learning, and it might just revolutionize how you think about acquiring new knowledge and skills. Micro-learning is exactly what it sounds like. Learning in small, bite-sized chunks, practiced consistently over time. Instead of marathon study sessions, you engage in brief, focused learning periods, often as short as 10 minutes, on a daily basis. This approach might seem too simple to be effective. How could just 10 minutes a day lead to mastery of complex skills or subjects? The answer lies in understanding how our brains actually process and retain information. When you study or practice something, your brain forms new neural connections. These connections are initially fragile, like footpaths rather than highways. With repeated use, these pathways strengthen. But here's the crucial insight. This strengthening process happens most effectively when the pathways are activated repeatedly over time, not all at once. Studying for 4 hours straight might feel productive, but much of that time is actually inefficient. Your attention wanes, your retention decreases, and the law of diminishing returns kicks in. By contrast, a focused 10-minute session represents prime learning time. Your attention is fresh, your concentration is high, and nearly every minute is productive. Moreover, the spacing between daily sessions is not lost learning time. It's actually critical for the consolidation process. During these periods, your brain continues to process the information, moving it from short-term to long-term memory and integrating it with existing knowledge. This happens largely during sleep, which is why daily practice, ensuring a sleep cycle between each session, is so powerful. This insight leads us to what cognitive scientists call the spacing effect, one of the most robust findings in learning research. Information is remembered better when study sessions are spaced out over time rather than crammed together. This effect has been demonstrated across virtually every type of learning, from vocabulary acquisition to motor skills to mathematical concepts. The spacing effect explains why cramming for exams is such a poor strategy for long-term retention. You might pass the test, but the information quickly fades because it hasn't been properly consolidated into long-term memory. By contrast, studying the same material in short sessions over days or weeks leads to much stronger retention, even if the total study time is identical. This brings us to what I call the 10-minute rule. If you want to learn something new or develop a skill, commit to practicing it for at least 10 minutes every day. This rule is powerful for several reasons. First, 10 minutes is short enough that it's difficult to make excuses. Even on your busiest days, you can find 10 minutes. It's short enough to fit into the margins of your schedule, before work, during a lunch break, or right before bed. Second, 10 minutes is long enough to make real progress. In a focused 10-minute session, you can review dozens of vocabulary words, practice a musical passage multiple times, read several pages of material, or write a few paragraphs. These small efforts compound dramatically over time. Third, the daily frequency is key to both habit formation and optimal learning. By practicing every day, you're not just accumulating learning time, you're training your brain to prioritize this information, signaling, "This is important, remember this." You're also building a habit that becomes increasingly automatic and effortless. Finally, the 10-minute commitment often leads to more. Once you've started a learning session, the hardest part, beginning, is behind you. Many people find that their planned 10 minutes naturally extends to 15 or 20 because they become engaged in the material. This is a bonus, but not the goal. The consistency of the daily practice is far more important than the length of any individual session. The power of this approach becomes clear when you consider the cumulative effect over time. 10 minutes daily adds up to over 60 hours in a year, equivalent to taking a 2-week intensive course in a subject. But because this learning is spaced optimally for retention and skill building, its impact far exceeds what could be achieved in a 2-week crash course. This brings us to another key principle of microlearning: spaced repetition. This technique involves reviewing information at increasing intervals, just as you're about to forget it. This timing is crucial. Reviewing too soon is inefficient, while reviewing too late means you've already forgotten and have to relearn from scratch. The ideal spacing follows a pattern where intervals between reviews gradually increase, perhaps reviewing new information after 1 day, then 3 days, then a week, then 2 weeks, and so on. This approach maximizes retention while minimizing the total time spent reviewing. Various systems have been developed to implement spaced repetition, from simple flashcard methods to sophisticated digital algorithms that track your performance and schedule reviews at optimal intervals. But even without these formal systems, the principle can be applied by simply ensuring that you revisit previously learned material at increasing intervals while continuing to add new information. What makes spaced repetition so powerful is that it works with your brain's natural forgetting curve rather than fighting against it. Psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus discovered in the 1880s that memory decay follows a predictable pattern. We forget most rapidly right after learning, with the rate of forgetting slowing over time. By timing reviews to occur just before you would forget the information, you strengthen the memory trace most efficiently. This approach stands in stark contrast to the common practice of studying material once and never reviewing it, or reviewing randomly without regard to optimal timing. The difference in results can be dramatic. Studies show that properly spaced repetition can increase retention by 200 to 400% compared to mass learning, studying all at once. The beauty of microlearning is that it makes this kind of optimal spacing natural and manageable. When you commit to 10 minutes daily, you can easily allocate part of that time to reviewing previous material using spaced repetition principles while still introducing new information in each session. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of microlearning is how it transforms the accumulation of expertise over time. Most people dramatically overestimate what they can learn in a day and underestimate what they can learn in a year of consistent practice. Consider language learning as an example. If you learn just 5 new words a day, a task that takes only a few minutes, you'll have acquired over 1,800 words in a year. Given that the 2,000 most common words in most languages account for about 80% of everyday usage, this simple practice would bring you to functional conversational ability in just over a year. Or consider writing. If you write just 300 words a day, about a page of text, requiring perhaps 10 to 15 minutes, you'll have written over 100,000 words in a year. That's the length of a substantial book. Many aspiring authors never complete their novels because they're waiting for large blocks of free time that never materialize. The micro-learning approach would have them complete a book almost accidentally through daily small efforts. The same principle applies to virtually any skill or knowledge domain. Want to learn to code? 10 minutes daily spent working through tutorials or solving small programming challenges will build substantial skills over a year. Interested in history? Reading 10 pages a day will get you through several comprehensive books in a year, making you more knowledgeable than most people on your chosen historical period. This accumulation happens almost imperceptibly day by day, but the long-term results can be extraordinary. It's another perfect example of the compounding principle we explored earlier, small daily investments yielding remarkable returns over time. One of the most common objections to this approach is, "I don't have time." But the micro-learning philosophy turns this objection on its head by focusing on leveraging idle moments that already exist in your day. Think about how many 5 or 10-minute periods you have that are currently underutilized. Waiting for appointments, commuting, the few minutes before meetings start, or time spent standing in lines. These moments, scattered throughout your day, add up to significant potential learning time that typically goes to waste. The key is to be prepared to capture these moments. This might mean having learning materials readily accessible on your phone, carrying a small notebook or flashcard set, or having audio lessons available for listening during commutes or chores. For example, you might use a mobile app to practice language vocabulary while waiting for your coffee to brew. You could listen to an educational podcast during your commute. You might keep a small book related to your field in your bag to read while waiting for appointments. Or you could use the 5 minutes before a meeting starts to review notes on a topic you're learning. This approach doesn't require finding additional time in your day. It simply makes better use of the time you already have. It's about recognizing that learning doesn't need to happen in long, formal sessions. It can be woven into the fabric of your daily life through these micro moments. What makes this strategy particularly powerful is that it removes the friction that often prevents learning. When you need to set aside a large block of time, find a specific location, and gather particular materials, the barriers to starting are high. But when learning can happen in small bursts throughout your day with materials you already have on hand, those barriers disappear. This brings us to another powerful concept that aligns perfectly with microlearning: Kaizen, the Japanese philosophy of continuous improvement through small, incremental changes. Originally developed in the context of manufacturing and business processes, Kaizen focuses on making tiny improvements every day rather than seeking dramatic breakthroughs. Over time, these small improvements compound into significant advancements. Applied to learning, the Kaizen philosophy suggests that mastery comes not from occasional intensive efforts, but from consistent small steps forward. Each day's 10-minute practice session represents one of these small steps, perhaps imperceptible in isolation, but powerful in accumulation. What makes the Kaizen approach particularly valuable is its sustainability. Dramatic changes are difficult to maintain and often lead to burnout or abandonment. Small changes, by contrast, can be integrated into your life without disruption, making them much more likely to stick as long-term habits. This sustainability is crucial because true mastery in any domain requires long-term commitment. The world's top performers in any field, whether music, sports, science, or business, didn't achieve their status through short bursts of intensive effort. They achieved it through years of consistent practice, often in relatively short daily sessions, focused on deliberate improvement. Even at the highest levels of expertise, the principle of daily practice in manageable sessions remains powerful. Concert pianists typically practice in sessions of 60 to 90 minutes with breaks in between, rather than marathon 8-hour sessions. Top chess players study the game daily, but often in focused bursts, rather than exhausting marathons. Elite athletes incorporate daily skill drills that might take only minutes, but, performed consistently, maintain and sharpen crucial abilities. The micro-learning approach thus isn't just for beginners or casual learners. It's a fundamental principle of effective learning that applies at all levels of expertise. The specifics may change. An expert might need more than 10 minutes daily to continue advancing, but the core principle of consistent, spaced practice remains constant. What makes micro-learning particularly powerful in today's world is how well it aligns with modern cognitive challenges. We live in an age of unprecedented distraction, with attention spans seemingly shrinking in the face of constant notifications, updates, and information overload. Long study sessions have become increasingly difficult to sustain in this environment. The ability to focus deeply for hours at a time is becoming rarer, but short, focused learning sessions of just 10 minutes remain achievable for most people, even in our distraction-rich world. Moreover, micro-learning aligns with the rapid pace of knowledge evolution today. In many fields, information changes so quickly that the traditional model of learning, study intensively once, then apply that knowledge for years, no longer works. Continuous learning has become essential, and the micro-learning approach provides a sustainable framework for lifelong knowledge acquisition. The practical implementation of micro-learning is straightforward but requires intentionality. Here are key strategies to make it work. First, clearly define what you want to learn. Vague goals like learn more about history are less effective than specific ones like understand the key events and figures of the Renaissance period. Specificity helps you focus your limited learning time on the most relevant materials. Second, break your learning goal into the smallest possible components. If you're learning a language, this might mean focusing on specific vocabulary categories, grammar concepts, or conversational phrases. If you're learning programming, it might mean mastering individual functions or concepts. This granularity makes it possible to make meaningful progress even in short sessions. Third, create a concrete daily practice plan. Decide exactly what your 10 minutes will consist of each day. Will you review flashcards, read a few pages, watch a short tutorial video, practice a specific skill? Having this clarity eliminates decision fatigue and makes it easier to start your daily practice. Fourth, establish triggers for your learning sessions by linking them to existing habits. Perhaps you'll practice right after brushing your teeth in the morning, during your lunch break, or just before bed. These consistent cues help establish your learning practice as a habit. Fifth, prepare your learning environment to minimize friction. Have materials readily accessible, whether physical or digital. Eliminate potential distractions during your practice time. Make starting as easy as possible. Finally, track your progress. This could be as simple as marking completed days on a calendar or as detailed as noting exactly what you studied and how well you performed. This tracking provides motivation through visible progress and helps identify patterns in your learning. The beauty of microlearning is that it democratizes knowledge acquisition. You don't need special resources, large blocks of free time, or exceptional willpower. You just need 10 minutes a day and the consistency to show up for your practice. This accessibility is revolutionary. Throughout much of history, extensive education and skill development were luxuries available primarily to those with wealth and leisure time. The micro-learning approach makes continuous growth accessible to virtually everyone, regardless of schedule constraints or resources. It's important to note that micro-learning isn't about lowering standards or accepting mediocrity. It's about recognizing that the path to excellence is paved with small, consistent steps rather than occasional leaps. The total investment of time might be similar or even greater than traditional approaches, but it's distributed in a way that works with your brain's natural learning mechanisms rather than against them. The micro-learning approach also transforms the emotional experience of learning. Traditional intensive learning often involves stress, pressure, and a sense of sacrifice. I have to give up my weekend to study. Micro-learning, by contrast, can become a pleasant daily ritual, a small gift you give yourself each day, a moment of growth amid life's busyness. This positive emotional association is crucial for long-term sustainability. When learning feels good, when it provides a sense of accomplishment and progress without overwhelming stress, you're much more likely to continue the practice indefinitely. And that's ultimately the goal, not just to learn a specific skill or subject, but to become a lifelong learner who continuously grows and adapts. In today's rapidly changing world, this capacity for ongoing learning is perhaps the most valuable skill of all. The micro-learning approach, 10 minutes a day, every day, provides a framework for this lifelong growth that's both effective and sustainable. It works with your brain's natural learning mechanisms rather than against them. It fits into even the busiest lifestyle, and it yields remarkable results over time through the power of consistency and compounding. As you move forward from this chapter, consider what knowledge or skill you might develop through just 10 minutes of daily practice. What have you been wanting to learn but thought you didn't have time for? What expertise might you develop over the next year through small, consistent efforts? Remember that the time will pass anyway. A year from now, you'll be a year older, whether or not you've invested in learning. The only question is whether you'll also be a year more knowledgeable, a year more skilled, a year closer to mastery in areas that matter to you. The choice to embrace micro-learning isn't just about acquiring specific knowledge. It's about becoming the kind of person who grows continuously, who sees learning not as an occasional event, but as a daily practice. It's about transforming your relationship with knowledge acquisition from one of scarcity, I don't have time to learn, to one of abundance. I can learn anything through consistent small steps. In our next chapter, we'll explore another deceptively simple practice that can transform your mental landscape in just minutes a day. While micro-learning helps you acquire knowledge and skills, this next practice helps you access a state of mind that enhances everything else in your life, from focus and creativity to emotional balance and stress resilience. And like micro-learning, it requires far less time and effort than you might imagine. What mental superpower could you develop with just a few minutes of daily practice? Chapter 5, Easy Mindfulness. Your phone pings with a notification. Your mind immediately races to what it might be. An email from your boss? A text from that person you've been waiting to hear from? A news alert about something terrible happening somewhere in the world? Before you even check, your heart rate has increased slightly. Your muscles have tensed. Your attention has been hijacked from whatever you were doing. And this happens dozens, perhaps hundreds of times throughout your day. In our hyper-connected world, this scenario plays out constantly. Our attention is pulled in countless directions. Our minds bounce between past regrets and future anxieties. Our nervous systems remain on high alert, responding to an endless stream of digital and real-world stimuli. The result? A pervasive sense of being overwhelmed, scattered, and never quite at peace. What if there was a simple practice that could help you regain control of your attention? A practice that could lower your stress levels, improve your focus, and help you feel more grounded in an increasingly chaotic world. A practice that required no special equipment, could be done anywhere, and took just minutes a day? This practice exists, and it's been refined over thousands of years. Yet many people misunderstand it, believing it to be more complicated, time-consuming, or esoteric than it actually is. They picture silent retreats, uncomfortable lotus positions, or hours spent trying to empty the mind, an impossible and unnecessary goal. The reality is much simpler and more accessible. The practice I'm referring to can be integrated into your daily life with minimal disruption. It can be done in as little as 2 minutes, and its benefits are supported by a growing body of scientific research. But before I reveal exactly what this practice entails, let's consider what happens in your mind throughout a typical day. From the moment you wake up, your mind is active, planning the day ahead, reviewing yesterday's events, worrying about potential problems, fantasizing about desired outcomes. This mental activity continues almost nonstop until you fall asleep at night. Even then, your mind keeps working in dreams. Much of this mental activity happens automatically below the level of conscious awareness. Your mind generates thoughts, and you identify with those thoughts without questioning them. I am my thoughts, your mind implicitly assumes. This automatic thinking becomes the lens through which you experience reality. The problem isn't thinking itself. Thinking is a magnificent tool that has enabled humanity's greatest achievements. The problem is unconscious, compulsive thinking that continues without your awareness or control. This kind of thinking often creates unnecessary suffering through rumination, worry, judgment, and other unproductive mental patterns. When you're caught in these patterns, you're not really present in your life. You're living in a mental simulation of reality rather than experiencing reality directly. You're having lunch with a friend while mentally rehearsing an upcoming presentation. You're playing with your child while mentally replaying an argument from earlier. You're lying in bed while mentally creating worst-case scenarios about tomorrow. This mental time travel, constantly moving between past and future while rarely being fully present, robs life of its richness and creates a persistent background of stress. Your body responds to your thoughts as if they were reality, producing stress hormones in response to imagined threats and problems. The practice we're exploring in this chapter addresses this fundamental challenge by training your attention to return to the present moment, the only moment that actually exists and the only one in which you can take effective action. This practice is mindfulness. At its core, mindfulness is simply the art of paying attention to your present experience with openness and curiosity rather than judgment. It's noticing what's happening right now, in your body, in your mind, and in your surroundings, without getting caught up in automatic reactions to what you notice. This might sound trivial, but it represents a profound shift from our default mode of operating. Most of us spend our days lost in thought, barely aware of our actual experience. Mindfulness invites us to wake up to the reality of our lives as they unfold moment by moment. The good news is that mindfulness doesn't require you to stop thinking or to achieve some special state of consciousness. It simply involves noticing what's already happening, including the activity of your mind. It's less about doing something new and more about stopping something old, the habit of being lost in thought without realizing it. And here's where the easy part comes in. You can practice mindfulness in very short sessions and still derive significant benefits. You don't need to meditate for an hour a day or attend lengthy retreats. Research shows that even brief daily practices can lead to measurable improvements in well-being. A 2024 study published in the British Journal of Health Psychology found that just 10 minutes of mindfulness practice each day significantly improved participants' well-being and reduced depression and anxiety levels compared to a control group. The mindfulness group's anxiety decreased by about 12% more than the control, and these benefits were largely maintained even a month after the daily practice period ended. Other studies have shown that brief mindfulness practices can lower stress hormones, improve attention span, and even change brain structure over time, increasing gray matter in areas related to memory and emotional regulation. These findings challenge the notion that mindfulness requires a major time commitment to be effective. Just as we discussed with microlearning in the previous chapter, consistency often matters more than duration when it comes to mindfulness practice. A few minutes every day will generally yield better results than an hour once a week. This is good news for busy people who want to improve their mental well-being but don't have large blocks of time to devote to practice. It means that mindfulness is accessible to virtually everyone, regardless of schedule constraints. So what does this easy mindfulness look like in practice? Let's start with the simplest and most fundamental technique: mindful breathing. Breathing is always happening in the present moment. You can't breathe in the past or future, only now. This makes the breath a perfect anchor for present moment awareness. Additionally, the breath connects the conscious and unconscious aspects of your being. You can breathe automatically or choose to control your breath, making it a bridge between the voluntary and involuntary aspects of your nervous system. To practice mindful breathing, simply direct your attention to the physical sensations of breathing. You might notice the air moving through your nostrils, the rising and falling of your chest, or the expansion and contraction of your abdomen. There's no need to control your breath. Just observe it as it naturally occurs. Start with just 2 to 5 minutes of this practice. Set a timer so you don't need to keep checking the clock. Sit in a comfortable position with your back reasonably straight. Close your eyes if that helps you focus inward. As you observe your breath, your mind will wander, perhaps to thoughts about your day, physical sensations, sounds in your environment, or any number of other distractions. This is completely normal and expected. Mindfulness isn't about preventing the mind from wandering. It's about noticing when it has wandered and gently bringing attention back to your chosen focus. Each time you notice your mind has wandered and you bring it back to the breath, you're strengthening your attention muscle. It's like doing a repetition in a mental gym. The wandering isn't a failure. The noticing and returning is the practice. You might find it helpful to count your breaths as a way to maintain focus. Count 1 on the inhale, 2 on the exhale, and so on up to 10, then start again at 1. If you lose count, simply begin again at 1 without judgment. Another approach is to silently say in and out, or rising and falling as you breathe. These mental notes can help anchor your attention to the breath. For some people, using a specific breathing pattern can help maintain focus. For example, you might try inhaling for a count of 4, holding for a count of 2, and exhaling for a count of 6. This pattern not only gives the mind something specific to track, but also activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode that counteracts stress. Practice this brief, mindful breathing exercise daily, ideally at the same time each day to help establish a habit. Many people find that first thing in the morning works well before the day's activities begin to compete for attention. Others prefer to practice before bed to help transition to sleep or during a midday break to reset and refresh the mind. The key is consistency rather than duration. 5 minutes every day will yield better results than 30 minutes once a week. Remember the principle of compounding that we've discussed throughout this book. Small daily actions accumulate into significant changes over time. While formal breathing practice forms a foundation for mindfulness, the ultimate goal is to bring mindful awareness into your daily activities. This integration allows you to experience the benefits of mindfulness throughout your day, not just during dedicated practice sessions. Any routine activity can become an opportunity for mindfulness. Consider your morning cup of coffee or tea. Instead of drinking it while checking email or scrolling through news, try bringing your full attention to the experience. Notice the warmth of the cup in your hands. Observe the steam rising. Smell the aroma before taking a sip. Feel the temperature and texture of the liquid. Taste the flavors as they unfold on your palate. This kind of full sensory engagement with an ordinary activity transforms it into a rich, satisfying experience. It also trains your brain to be present rather than constantly seeking stimulation elsewhere. Walking provides another excellent opportunity for mindfulness practice. Instead of walking on autopilot while your mind races ahead to your destination or dwells on problems, try paying attention to the physical sensations of walking. Feel your feet making contact with the ground. Notice the shifting of weight from one leg to the other. Observe the movement of your arms and the rhythm of your breathing as you walk. Even waiting, usually considered wasted time, can become valuable mindfulness practice. Instead of immediately reaching for your phone when you find yourself waiting in line or for an appointment, try using that time to check in with your present experience. Notice your posture and any areas of tension in your body. Observe your breath. Be aware of sounds, sights, and other sensations around you. These integrated mindfulness practices don't require extra time in your day. They simply bring quality of attention to activities you're already doing. This makes them especially valuable for busy people who might struggle to find time for formal meditation. One particularly powerful form of integrated mindfulness is taking a single mindful breath before transitioning to a new activity. Before starting your car, answering the phone, entering a meeting, or beginning a conversation, pause for just one conscious breath. This micro-practice helps reset your attention and creates a moment of presence in what might otherwise be a day of continuous partial attention. The cumulative effect of these small moments of mindfulness throughout your day can be profound. They interrupt the autopilot mode that characterizes much of our lives and bring us back to direct experience of the present moment. Beyond these specific practices, mindfulness offers powerful tools for managing stress and cultivating emotional balance, perhaps its most widely appreciated benefits in our high-pressure world. Stress is not just an unpleasant feeling, it's a physiological state that affects every system in your body. Chronic stress has been linked to a host of health problems, from cardiovascular disease to immune dysfunction to digestive issues. It also impairs cognitive function, making it harder to think clearly, make good decisions, and learn new information. Mindfulness addresses stress at its source by changing how you relate to stressful thoughts and situations. Instead of being swept away by stress reactions, mindfulness creates a space between stimulus and response, a space in which you can choose how to respond rather than react automatically. A particularly effective mindfulness practice for stress reduction is the body scan. This involves systematically bringing attention to different parts of your body, noticing sensations without trying to change them. Start at your feet and slowly move upward, spending a few seconds with each body part. Notice any tension, discomfort, warmth, tingling, or other sensations. If you don't feel anything in a particular area, simply note the absence of sensation. The body scan serves several purposes. First, it brings you into direct contact with your physical experience, anchoring you in the present moment. Second, it helps you recognize where you're holding tension so you can consciously release it. Third, it strengthens the mind-body connection, making you more aware of how your emotional states manifest physically. This practice can be done in as little as 3 minutes, though longer scans of 10 to 20 minutes allow for more detailed attention. Even the brief version can significantly reduce stress levels when practiced regularly. Another powerful stress reduction technique is the stop practice, a mini mindfulness intervention you can use whenever you notice yourself becoming stressed or overwhelmed. Stop what you're doing. Take a breath. Observe what's happening in your body, mind, and surroundings. Proceed with awareness. This simple 4-step process interrupts the stress response and brings you back to the present moment, where you can respond skillfully rather than react automatically. It takes only a few seconds, but can prevent stress from escalating into a full-blown fight-or-flight response. Regular mindfulness practice also helps regulate the autonomic nervous system, gradually shifting the balance from sympathetic dominance, fight or flight, toward parasympathetic activation, rest and digest. This shift creates a calmer baseline state, making you less reactive to stressors and more resilient when challenges arise. The stress-reducing effects of mindfulness aren't just subjective. They're measurable in physiological markers like cortisol levels, heart rate variability, and immune function. Studies have consistently shown that regular mindfulness practice leads to improvements in these objective indicators of stress, even with relatively brief daily practices. Beyond stress reduction, mindfulness offers powerful tools for improving focus and concentration, critical skills in our distraction-filled world. Our attention is constantly pulled in multiple directions by notifications, interruptions, and our own wandering minds. This fragmented attention not only reduces productivity, but also diminishes our experience of life. When we're perpetually multitasking, we're never fully present for anything. Mindfulness training directly addresses this challenge by strengthening attention control. Each time you notice your mind has wandered during meditation and bring it back to your chosen focus, you're building the neural pathways that support sustained attention. This training transfers to daily activities, making it easier to maintain focus on important tasks and resist distractions. Research has shown that regular mindfulness practice can improve various aspects of attention, including selective attention, focusing on relevant information while ignoring distractions, sustained attention, maintaining focus over time, and task switching, the ability to shift attention efficiently when needed. A simple daily practice to build this skill is to choose one routine activity and commit to doing it with full attention. This might be the first 10 minutes of work, reading emails, or any other discrete task. During this time, focus exclusively on the task at hand. When you notice your mind wandering or feel the urge to multitask, gently bring your attention back to the primary task. This practice of one thing at a time runs counter to our culture's glorification of multitasking, but it aligns with what neuroscience tells us about how the brain works most effectively. The brain doesn't actually multitask. It rapidly switches between tasks, with each switch incurring a cognitive cost. By practicing focused attention on one task, you're working with your brain's natural capabilities rather than against them. Over time, this practice not only improves your ability to focus, but also enhances the quality of your work and your experience of doing it. Tasks become more engaging and less draining when approached with full attention rather than divided focus. Perhaps the most profound benefit of mindfulness practice is its effect on emotional resilience, the ability to navigate life's ups and downs with greater equanimity and less reactivity. Emotions are an essential part of human experience, providing valuable information and motivating action. But when emotions overwhelm us or persist beyond their usefulness, they can lead to suffering and poor decisions. Mindfulness offers a middle path between suppressing emotions, which doesn't work long-term, and being controlled by them. A key mindfulness practice for building emotional resilience is noting or labeling emotions as they arise. When you notice a strong emotion, simply name it silently to yourself: anger, fear, sadness, joy, etc. This simple act of labeling creates a small but crucial space between you and the emotion. You're no longer completely identified with it, but are observing it with awareness. Neuroscience research has shown that this labeling process actually reduces activity in the amygdala, the brain's alarm center, and increases activity in the prefrontal cortex, involved in regulation and executive function. In other words, naming an emotion helps tame its intensity at the neural level. You can practice this throughout your day whenever you notice emotional reactions arising. It takes only a moment and can be done silently in any situation. Over time, this practice develops your capacity to recognize emotions earlier in their development, before they've fully taken hold, giving you more choice in how to respond. Another valuable practice is what mindfulness teacher Tara Brach calls the RAIN process, a more detailed approach for working with difficult emotions. R. Recognize what's happening. Allow the experience to be there, just as it is. I. Investigate with interest and care. Nurture with self-compassion. This process guides you to acknowledge emotions without judgment, explore them with curiosity rather than aversion, and respond with kindness toward yourself. It transforms emotional challenges into opportunities for growth and self-understanding. With regular practice, you'll likely notice a shift in your relationship with emotions. Rather than being tossed about by emotional storms, you'll develop the capacity to experience emotions fully while maintaining a sense of spaciousness around them. You'll be less likely to act impulsively based on momentary feelings and more able to respond in ways aligned with your deeper values. This emotional resilience doesn't mean you won't feel difficult emotions. It means you'll have more capacity to work with them skillfully rather than being overwhelmed by them. This is perhaps the most transformative aspect of mindfulness practice, affecting every area of life, from relationships to work to personal well-being. What makes all these benefits particularly remarkable is that they stem from a practice that requires minimal time and no special equipment or settings. Just a few minutes of daily mindfulness practice, consistently applied, can lead to significant improvements in mental well-being, focus, stress levels, and emotional regulation. This accessibility is what makes mindfulness such a perfect example of the easy mode approach to life transformation that we're exploring in this book. It's not about adding another demanding practice to your already busy life. It's about making small, strategic investments of attention that yield outsized returns in well-being and effectiveness. To integrate mindfulness into your life in this easy mode fashion, start with just 2 to 5 minutes of formal practice daily, ideally at the same time each day, to help establish a habit. Use the mindful breathing technique described earlier, or try the body scan if that feels more accessible to you. Complement this formal practice with informal mindfulness integrated into your daily activities, the mindful cup of tea, the conscious transitions between activities, the moments of present moment awareness while waiting or walking. When you notice stress arising, use the stop practice to interrupt the stress cycle before it escalates. When strong emotions emerge, practice labeling them to create space and perspective. Remember that consistency matters more than duration. A few minutes every day will yield better results than occasional longer sessions. And approach the practice with curiosity and kindness rather than striving or self-judgment. Mindfulness is not about achieving a particular state or outcome. It's about being present with whatever is arising, exactly as it is. Over time, you may choose to extend your practice sessions or explore more advanced techniques. But even if you never go beyond these simple, brief practices, you'll likely experience significant benefits if you apply them consistently. The invitation of mindfulness is ultimately quite simple: to wake up to your life as it's actually happening, rather than being lost in thought about the past or future. It's an invitation to experience the richness of each moment, the sensations, emotions. Chapter 6, Growth Monetization. What if every minute you spent improving yourself was also making you richer? Imagine if the journal entry you wrote this morning wasn't just clarifying your thoughts, but was actually generating future income. Picture the 10 minutes of language practice you squeezed in during your commute as deposits into both your skill account and your bank account. Consider the possibility that the mindfulness exercise you did before bed wasn't just reducing your stress, but was simultaneously increasing your earning potential. Most people see personal development and financial success as separate pursuits. They work on themselves for intrinsic benefits, greater happiness, better health, improved relationships, and they work on their careers or businesses for extrinsic rewards, money, status, security. These are treated as distinct domains requiring different strategies and time allocations. But what if this separation is artificial? What if the line between self-improvement and wealth creation is much thinner than we've been led to believe? Throughout the previous chapters, we've explored how small daily actions can transform various aspects of your life. We've seen how consistent reflection, micro-learning, and mindfulness practices can enhance your mental clarity, knowledge base, and emotional well-being. These benefits alone would justify the modest time investments these practices require. But there's another dimension to these practices that often goes unrecognized, one that extends beyond personal satisfaction into the realm of tangible, material rewards. This dimension is what I call growth monetization, and it represents one of the most powerful leverage points in the pursuit of an easier, more abundant life. To understand this concept, we need to first recognize a fundamental truth about the modern economy. What you earn is increasingly determined by what you can contribute, not just the time you put in. In the industrial age, wages were primarily tied to hours worked. You punched in, did your assigned tasks, punched out, and got paid accordingly. Your personal growth might make you happier, but it had limited impact on your income unless it led to a formal promotion or job change. Today's knowledge economy operates differently. Value creation is tied less to time spent and more to problems solved, innovations developed, and impact generated. In this environment, your knowledge, skills, creativity, judgment, and even your emotional intelligence directly affect your economic value. The person who can solve complex problems, communicate effectively, learn rapidly, and collaborate well doesn't just perform better, they earn more. This shift means that personal development isn't just a nice-to-have for your career, it's becoming essential. The habits and practices that make you a better human also make you a more valuable professional. The boundaries between personal and professional growth are blurring, creating an unprecedented opportunity to monetize your self-improvement efforts. But how exactly does this work? How do daily journaling, microlearning, or mindfulness practices translate into promotions, raises, business opportunities, or investment returns? The answer lies in understanding what I call career capital, the collection of rare and valuable skills, knowledge, and personal qualities that you can leverage for economic returns. Career capital is the currency of the modern workplace, and it's accumulated through deliberate practice and consistent growth habits. Think about the most successful people in any field. What sets them apart isn't just technical expertise, though that's important. It's also their reliability, their communication skills, their problem-solving abilities, their emotional regulation, their capacity to learn and adapt. These qualities aren't innate for most people. They're developed through consistent practice and deliberate habit formation. This is where your daily habits enter the picture. Each small practice you maintain doesn't just improve you in isolation, it builds career capital that the marketplace values and rewards. Consider the habit of daily journaling we explored in Chapter 3. On the surface, this might seem like a purely personal practice with no direct professional application. But look deeper. When you journal regularly, you're developing clarity of thought, improving your writing skills, enhancing your self-awareness, and strengthening your decision-making process. All of these translate directly into professional capabilities. The employee who can articulate ideas clearly in writing, who understands their own strengths and weaknesses, who makes thoughtful decisions rather than impulsive ones, this person stands out. They're more likely to be trusted with important projects, considered for advancement, and valued by the organization. Their journaling habit, seemingly unrelated to their job, has built career capital that the market recognizes and rewards. Or consider the micro-learning practice from Chapter 4. 10 minutes daily spent learning about your industry, developing a new skill, or deepening your expertise compounds over time. After a year, you've invested over 60 hours in targeted learning, equivalent to a week and a half of full-time study. This accumulated knowledge becomes part of your professional toolkit, allowing you to solve problems others can't, spot opportunities others miss, and contribute value others don't. This knowledge differential doesn't go unnoticed. In competitive environments, even small edges in capability can lead to disproportionate rewards. The person who consistently knows a bit more, who can do a bit more, who understands a bit more deeply than their peers, doesn't just perform 10% better, they often earn 50% or 100% more because of how value is distributed in knowledge work. The mindfulness practices from Chapter 5 follow the same pattern. Regular mindfulness training improves your focus, reduces stress, and enhances emotional regulation. In professional contexts, these qualities translate to better decision-making under pressure, more effective communication during conflicts, and sustained productivity when others are distracted or overwhelmed. In high-stakes environments, these abilities are invaluable. The professional who remains calm during a crisis, who maintains focus during long projects, who communicates clearly even in tense situations, this person becomes indispensable. Their mindfulness practice, seemingly unrelated to their technical skills, has built career capital that commands a premium in the marketplace. This pattern, personal habits building professional value, extends to virtually every growth practice we've discussed. Each small, consistent action not only improves your life experience, but also enhances your capacity to create value in ways the economy rewards. The key insight here is that you're not just building random skills or qualities. you're developing the specific meta capabilities that the modern economy increasingly values: learning ability, clarity of thought, emotional intelligence, focus, consistency, and adaptability. These are the traits that help you navigate complexity and change, the defining features of today's work environment. Research in personality psychology supports this connection between personal traits and professional outcomes. Studies have consistently found that conscientiousness, being organized, reliable, and goal-oriented, is one of the strongest personality predictors of career success and income. These aren't innate, fixed qualities, but habits and mindsets that can be deliberately cultivated through the kinds of practices we've been exploring. Similarly, research on the growth mindset by psychologist Carol Dweck has shown that people who believe their abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work, rather than being fixed traits, tend to achieve more in their careers. They take on challenges, persist through obstacles, and continuously improve in ways that lead to greater professional advancement and compensation. The beauty of this approach is that it creates a virtuous cycle. As you develop habits that enhance both your personal well-being and professional capabilities, you become more effective at work. This effectiveness leads to better opportunities and increased income, which in turn provides more resources and freedom to invest in further growth. The cycle accelerates over time, with each round of improvement laying the foundation for the next. But to fully leverage this dynamic, you need to be strategic about how you develop and deploy your growing capabilities. Let's explore how specific types of personal habits can be translated into professional and financial value. First, consider how your daily habits function as career capital. Every consistent practice you maintain is developing an asset that has market value, whether you're currently monetizing it or not. The habit of punctuality, for instance, might seem basic, but it builds a reputation for reliability that opens doors. The person who consistently delivers on time, who shows up when they say they will, who meets deadlines without drama, this person gets opportunities that others don't. Their reliability becomes a form of career capital that managers and clients value highly. Similarly, the habit of continuous learning builds the career capital of adaptability and expertise. In rapidly changing fields, the ability to quickly master new tools, techniques, or concepts is invaluable. The professional who spends even 10 minutes daily staying current in their field accumulates knowledge that keeps them relevant and in demand as others become obsolete. The habit of organized planning, perhaps through daily to-do lists or regular review sessions, builds the career capital of execution ability. The person who consistently turns plans into results, who manages complex projects without dropping balls, who delivers without constant supervision, this person advances faster and commands higher compensation because execution is rarer than ideas. Even seemingly personal habits like regular exercise or adequate sleep build career capital in the form of energy and cognitive performance. The professional who consistently brings full energy and clear thinking to their work outperforms those who are chronically tired, stressed, or foggy-headed. This performance differential eventually translates to economic returns. The key is to recognize that these habits aren't just making you better in some abstract sense, they're building specific capabilities that the market values and rewards. When you view your habits through this lens, the time and effort they require becomes not just a personal investment, but a professional one with tangible returns. This perspective shifts how you think about personal development. It's not just about becoming a better person, though that's valuable in itself. It's about becoming a more capable value creator in ways that the economy recognizes and compensates. Beyond building career capital through habits, there's another powerful way that personal development translates to financial returns: the transfer of skills across domains. Many of the capabilities you develop through personal growth practices have direct professional applications, even when the practices themselves seem unrelated to your work. This transfer effect multiplies the return on your self-improvement investments. Consider how the self-awareness developed through journaling enhances your professional decision-making. When you regularly reflect on your thoughts, feelings, and experiences, you become more attuned to your own patterns. What energizes you, what drains you, when you're at your best, and when you're struggling. This self-knowledge allows you to make better career choices, allocate your time more effectively, and position yourself for success rather than burnout. Or think about how the focus cultivated through mindfulness practice transfers to deep work capacity. In a distracted world, the ability to concentrate intensely on cognitively demanding tasks is becoming increasingly rare and valuable. The professional who can consistently enter a state of flow, producing high-quality work without constant interruption, has a significant advantage. The mindfulness practice that trains your attention doesn't just reduce your stress, it directly enhances your most economically valuable skill, your ability to focus. The learning techniques developed through micro-learning transfer to rapid professional adaptation. When you practice efficient learning in one domain, breaking knowledge into chunks, using spaced repetition, focusing on application rather than mere consumption, you're building learning meta-skills that apply to any new challenge. The professional who can quickly master new systems, tools, or concepts doesn't just know more, they can adapt faster as requirements change. Even emotional regulation skills developed through mindfulness or reflection practices transfer directly to leadership and collaboration abilities. The professional who can manage their reactions during conflict, who responds thoughtfully rather than reactively to pressure, who maintains perspective during setbacks. This person excels in team environments and leadership roles where emotional intelligence is essential. These transfer effects mean that time invested in personal development yields returns across multiple domains simultaneously. The journal entry that clarifies your thinking also improves your decision-making at work. The mindfulness practice that reduces your stress also enhances your focus during important projects. The learning technique that helps you master a hobby also accelerates your professional skill acquisition. This multi-domain return on investment is what makes personal development so economically powerful. You're not just becoming better in one isolated area, you're developing fundamental meta capabilities that enhance your performance across all areas of life, including those that generate income. Another crucial aspect of growth monetization is how a growth mindset creates and attracts opportunities. The belief that you can improve through effort and the consistent actions that flow from this belief doesn't just enhance your capabilities, it fundamentally changes how you engage with challenges and how others perceive you. When you approach your career with a growth mindset, you see challenges as opportunities to develop rather than threats to avoid. This perspective leads to different choices: volunteering for difficult projects, seeking feedback even when it might be uncomfortable, persisting through obstacles rather than giving up when things get hard. These choices expose you to more growth opportunities and demonstrate qualities that decision-makers value. The employee who raises their hand for challenging assignments, who actively seeks to expand their capabilities, who shows resilience in the face of setbacks, this person gets noticed. They're considered for promotions, special projects, and advancement opportunities because they've demonstrated both ability and potential. Moreover, a growth mindset makes you more likely to recognize opportunities that others miss. When you believe in your ability to develop new skills and adapt to new circumstances, you're more likely to see possibilities where others see only obstacles. You might identify an emerging need in your organization that aligns with skills you're developing, or recognize how a new technology could be applied to solve an existing problem. This opportunity recognition is a crucial component of career advancement and entrepreneurial success. The professional who can spot trends early, who identifies problems worth solving, who sees connections between disparate domains, this person creates value in ways that lead to outsized rewards. Beyond changing your own behavior and perceptions, a growth mindset also influences how others perceive and respond to you. People are naturally attracted to those who are actively improving and open to development. This attraction creates network effects that further enhance your opportunities. Managers want to invest in employees who demonstrate a commitment to growth. Clients prefer to work with professionals who continuously enhance their capabilities. Collaborators are drawn to partners who bring fresh insights and evolving skills to projects. By consistently developing yourself, you become a magnet for opportunities that might otherwise pass you by. This network effect extends beyond your immediate professional circle. As you develop expertise through consistent learning and practice, you become part of broader communities of knowledge and capability. These communities provide access to information, opportunities, and connections that aren't available to outsiders. For instance, the professional who spends 10 minutes daily learning about an emerging technology doesn't just acquire knowledge, they eventually become recognized within the community of practitioners. This recognition leads to invitations to participate in projects, speak at events, contribute to publications, or collaborate with other experts. Each of these opportunities further enhances both capabilities and visibility, creating a positive feedback loop of growth and opportunity. The growth mindset also influences how you respond to inevitable setbacks and failures. Rather than seeing them as evidence of fixed limitations, you view them as valuable feedback and learning opportunities. This resilience allows you to maintain momentum through difficulties that might derail others, ultimately leading to greater long-term success. Research supports this connection between mindset and opportunity. Studies have found that employees with growth mindsets receive more mentoring and development opportunities from managers, are more likely to be identified as high-potential talent, and advance more rapidly in organizations. The mindset itself becomes a form of career capital that opens doors and attracts investment from decision-makers. Beyond enhancing your value within existing structures, personal development can also create entirely new income streams through the monetization of knowledge and passions. This aspect of growth monetization is particularly powerful in the digital economy, where the barriers to sharing expertise and creating value have dramatically decreased. As you develop skills and knowledge through consistent practice, you're building assets that can be leveraged in multiple ways. The expertise you develop doesn't just make you more valuable in your current role. It creates possibilities for additional income streams through teaching, creating, consulting, or building products based on what you know. For example, the professional who spends 15 minutes daily deepening their understanding of a specialized topic eventually develops expertise that others value. This knowledge can be monetized through consulting, speaking, creating courses, writing books, or developing information products. What began as personal interest becomes a valuable asset that generates income beyond a primary salary. Similarly, skills developed through consistent practice can evolve into freelance or entrepreneurial opportunities. The person who dedicates time to improving their writing, design, programming, or other marketable skills builds capabilities that can be offered directly to clients or customers, often at premium rates compared to employee compensation. Even the insights gained through reflection practices can become valuable content when properly articulated and shared. The professional who regularly journals about challenges and solutions in their field accumulates wisdom that others would pay to access. These reflections can form the basis for articles, books, newsletters, or other content that generates both income and professional visibility. The key insight here is that knowledge and skills developed primarily for personal growth or current job performance can often be repurposed for additional income streams. This repurposing doesn't necessarily require leaving your job or making dramatic changes. It can be developed gradually through consistent small actions that leverage what you're already learning and doing. This approach to monetizing knowledge aligns perfectly with the easy mode philosophy we've been exploring. Rather than requiring massive upfront investments or risky career changes, it builds on the small daily actions you're already taking for personal growth. The additional effort to transform personal knowledge into monetizable assets is often minimal compared to the potential returns. The final aspect of growth monetization involves the parallel between personal habits and financial habits. The same principles that make small daily actions powerful for personal development also apply to wealth building. Just as consistent, small improvements compound into significant personal growth over time, regular small financial actions compound into substantial wealth. The discipline required to maintain daily journaling or learning practices is the same discipline needed to maintain consistent saving and investing habits. The patience to trust the process of gradual improvement in skills is the same patience required to build wealth through compound returns. This parallel creates a natural synergy between personal development and financial growth. As you strengthen your habit muscles through personal practices, you simultaneously develop the capacity for financial discipline. As you experience the power of compounding in skill development, you gain the perspective needed to appreciate and leverage financial compounding. Moreover, many of the specific capabilities developed through personal growth practices directly enhance financial decision-making. The clarity gained through reflection helps you identify your true financial priorities and avoid impulsive spending. The focus developed through mindfulness helps you resist consumerist distractions and stay committed to long-term financial goals. The learning skills honed through micro-learning help you acquire financial knowledge more efficiently. This connection between personal and financial habits means that as you implement the practices we've discussed in previous chapters, you're not just becoming a better person, you're becoming someone who can more effectively build and manage wealth. The self-mastery that results from consistent personal development naturally extends to mastery of your financial life. In this way, growth monetization comes full circle. The habits that enhance your capabilities also increase your earning potential, and the same habits that build your personal qualities also build your capacity to manage and grow wealth. Personal development and financial success become not separate pursuits, but different expressions of the same underlying principles and practices. This integrated perspective transforms how you view the time and effort invested in personal growth. It's not just making you happier, healthier, or more fulfilled, though these are valuable outcomes. It's also making you more capable of creating value in ways the economy rewards, more likely to recognize and seize opportunities, more equipped to develop additional income streams, and more disciplined in building and managing wealth. In essence, you're investing in the most valuable asset you'll ever own, yourself. And unlike other investments, this one pays dividends across all domains of life simultaneously. The return on investment for consistent personal development isn't just measured in greater happiness or fulfillment, it's also reflected in your bank account, investment portfolio, and overall financial security. As we move forward to the next chapter, we'll explore how to overcome one of the most common obstacles to consistent growth: the mental barriers that prevent us from taking action even when we know what to do. You've seen how small daily actions can transform your capabilities and even your financial situation. But what happens when procrastination, perfectionism, or self-doubt get in the way? What mental strategies can help you overcome these internal obstacles and maintain momentum even when motivation wanes? The answers might surprise you, and they're simpler than you might think. Chapter 7, Mental Mastery. You know what you need to do. You've read the books, watched the videos, taken the courses, you understand the principles of success in your field. You have the knowledge. And yet, the report sits unwritten. The project remains in the planning phase. The skill practice gets postponed again. The meditation cushion gathers dust. The journal stays blank. Why is there such a gap between what we know and what we do? Why do we struggle to act on our own best intentions? Why do we resist the very actions we know will improve our lives? This gap between knowledge and action represents the final frontier of personal development. You can have all the information, all the strategies, all the tools in the world, but if you can't get yourself to use them consistently, they remain theoretical rather than transformative. The most successful people aren't necessarily those who know the most. They're those who can act on what they know. They've developed the ability to direct their minds rather than being directed by them. They've achieved what we might call mental mastery. But what exactly does this term mean? And more importantly, how can ordinary people develop this capacity without spending years in monastic discipline or possessing superhuman willpower? The answer lies not in dramatic feats of self-control, but in understanding the subtle mechanisms that drive our behavior and implementing small daily practices that gradually reshape our mental landscape. Just as we've seen in previous chapters, transformative change often comes from simple actions applied consistently over time. To understand these mechanisms, we need to first recognize that the mind has its own protective logic. What we often label as procrastination or laziness is actually the mind's attempt to avoid discomfort, uncertainty, or potential failure. These avoidance patterns aren't character flaws. They're deeply ingrained psychological adaptations that once served a purpose but now limit our growth. Consider what happens when you face a challenging task. Perhaps it's writing a complex report, learning a difficult new skill, or having a potentially uncomfortable conversation. As you contemplate the task, your mind automatically performs a rapid assessment. How much effort will this require? What's the likelihood of success? What are the consequences of failure? If this assessment triggers uncertainty or anticipates discomfort, your brain's threat detection system activates. This system, designed to protect you from danger, doesn't distinguish well between physical threats and psychological ones. The prospect of criticism, failure, or even just the discomfort of sustained effort can trigger the same avoidance response as a physical threat. This is where procrastination enters the picture. Procrastination isn't simply delaying a task. It's a specific form of self-regulation failure where you delay despite expecting to be worse off for the delay. It's knowing you should start that project now, but watching videos instead, fully aware that you'll regret it later. Research by psychologist Piers Steele, who conducted a meta-analysis on procrastination, found that up to 95% of people report procrastinating occasionally, with around 20% identifying as chronic procrastinators. This isn't just a minor inconvenience. A 2023 cohort study of university students found that procrastination was associated with worse mental health outcomes, including higher rates of depression, anxiety, and stress. What's particularly insidious about procrastination is that it provides immediate relief, avoiding the discomfort of the task, at the cost of future pain, stress, poor quality work, missed opportunities. This creates a reinforcing cycle. You procrastinate, feel temporary relief, experience negative consequences, feel bad about those consequences, and then procrastinate again to avoid those negative feelings. Closely related to procrastination is perfectionism, the tendency to set unrealistically high standards and then feel distressed when those standards aren't met. While striving for excellence can be positive, maladaptive perfectionism creates a paralyzing fear of failure that prevents action altogether. Studies have found a strong correlation between maladaptive perfectionism and procrastination. The perfectionist mindset says, if I can't do this perfectly, I shouldn't do it at all. The procrastination response eagerly agrees, great, let's not start then. This creates a toxic partnership where perfectionism provides the excuse and procrastination provides the escape. Together, these twin challenges, procrastination and perfectionism, create a formidable barrier to personal growth. They prevent us from taking consistent action, learning from mistakes, and developing the skills and habits that lead to success. They keep us stuck in a cycle of intention without action, potential without realization. But here's the good news. These patterns are not fixed traits, but habits of mind that can be changed through consistent practice. Just as you can develop a physical habit through repetition, you can develop mental habits that support action rather than avoidance. The key insight is that mental mastery doesn't require eliminating these tendencies entirely. That's probably impossible given how deeply they're wired into our psychology. Instead, it involves developing specific practices that allow you to act effectively despite these tendencies. It's not about never feeling resistance. It's about having reliable ways to work through resistance when it arises. This approach aligns perfectly with our book's central theme. Small daily actions, consistently applied, lead to significant transformation over time. Just as we've seen with journaling, microlearning, and mindfulness, the path to mental mastery involves simple practices that gradually reshape your relationship with your own mind. Let's explore these practices, starting with understanding the specific triggers that activate your procrastination response. Procrastination doesn't happen randomly. It's triggered by specific aspects of tasks or situations that your mind interprets as threatening. By identifying your personal triggers, you can develop targeted strategies to address them. Common triggers include tasks that feel ambiguous or poorly defined. When you're not clear about what exactly needs to be done or how to approach it, the uncertainty triggers avoidance. Similarly, tasks that appear overwhelming in size or complexity often activate procrastination. Your mind balks at the perceived effort required. Fear of failure represents another major trigger. If you unconsciously believe that your performance on a task reflects your worth as a person, the stakes become impossibly high. Your mind protects you from this perceived threat by avoiding the task altogether. For some people, certain emotional states trigger procrastination. Feeling anxious, depressed, or even just tired can deplete the mental resources needed to override the immediate gratification of avoidance. Personality factors can also play a role. Some people are naturally more sensation-seeking and may procrastinate because they're drawn to the adrenaline rush of last-minute work. Others have a stronger need for autonomy and may procrastinate as a form of resistance when they feel their freedom is being constrained. The first step toward mental mastery is simply becoming aware of your specific triggers. This awareness creates a gap between stimulus and response, a space in which you can choose a different action rather than following the automatic procrastination pattern. A simple daily practice for developing this awareness is to spend a few minutes each evening reflecting on instances of procrastination during your day. Ask yourself, what was I avoiding? What feelings came up when I thought about the task? What was I doing instead? What story was I telling myself to justify the delay? This reflection isn't about self-criticism, it's about curious investigation. You're like a scientist studying an interesting phenomenon, not a judge delivering a verdict. This non-judgmental awareness is crucial because harsh self-criticism often triggers more procrastination as a way to escape the negative feelings. As you develop awareness of your triggers, you can implement the single most effective anti-procrastination strategy ever developed, the 5-minute rule. This deceptively simple technique involves committing to work on a task for just 5 minutes. That's it. After 5 minutes, you give yourself complete permission to stop if you want to. The only requirement is that you fully engage with the task for those 5 minutes. No distractions, no half-hearted effort. Why does this work so well? Because it bypasses the brain's threat detection system. 5 minutes doesn't register as threatening. It's too short to trigger fears of sustained effort, failure, or discomfort. Almost anyone can tolerate almost anything for just 5 minutes. But here's where the magic happens. Once you've started, you've overcome the biggest psychological barrier to action. The hardest part of any task is often beginning it. Once you're engaged, several psychological principles work in your favor. First, there's the Zeigarnik effect, the mind's tendency to remember uncompleted tasks better than completed ones. Once you've started something, your brain wants to finish it and will feel a subtle tension until it's done. This often leads to continuing well beyond the initial 5 minutes. Second, tasks usually feel worse in anticipation than in reality. The mind catastrophizes, imagining maximum effort and discomfort. But once you're actually doing the task, you realize it's not as bad as you feared. The 5-minute start gets you past this distorted anticipation. Third, starting creates momentum. Just as a physical object in motion tends to stay in motion, psychological momentum makes continuing easier than stopping. The 5-minute start generates this momentum from a standing start. To implement this practice, Identify one task each day that you've been avoiding. Commit to working on it for just 5 minutes, with full permission to stop after that time. Do this daily, and you'll begin to retrain your brain's response to challenging tasks. Over time, the resistance diminishes as your mind learns that starting isn't as threatening as it seemed. While procrastination involves avoiding tasks altogether, perfectionism involves setting standards so high that tasks become overwhelming or never feel complete. Addressing this mindset requires different strategies focused on recalibrating your standards and relationship with imperfection. One powerful daily practice is what we might call deliberate imperfection, intentionally doing something slightly below your capability as an exercise in psychological flexibility. This might involve sending an email without obsessively proofreading it, publishing a blog post before it feels completely ready, or submitting a report that's good but not exhaustively researched. The purpose isn't to do poor work, it's to challenge the rigid belief that anything less than perfect is unacceptable. By deliberately practicing good enough work and surviving the experience, you gradually desensitize yourself to the anxiety of imperfection. Another effective technique is time boxing, allocating a specific, limited amount of time to a task and stopping when that time is up, regardless of whether you feel the work is perfect. This forces prioritization of the most important elements and prevents the endless refinement that perfectionists are prone to. For example, you might give yourself exactly 30 minutes to prepare a presentation, or 1 hour to write a first draft, or 15 minutes to organize your workspace. When the time is up, you stop, even if the result isn't what you'd ideally want. This practice teaches your brain that constraints can actually enhance creativity and that completion often matters more than perfection. Regular reflection on the costs of perfectionism can also help recalibrate your standards. Ask yourself, what opportunities have I missed because I waited for perfect conditions? How much stress has perfectionism caused me? What would be possible if I redirected the energy spent on perfectionism towards starting new projects or learning from mistakes? These practices gradually shift your relationship with imperfection from one of fear and avoidance to one of acceptance and growth. You begin to see that progress requires iteration, that excellence comes from consistent good work rather than occasional perfect work, and that the pursuit of perfection often prevents the very mastery you seek. Beyond specific techniques for procrastination and perfectionism, mental mastery involves building general psychological strength through regular challenges to your comfort zone. Just as physical muscles develop through resistance training, mental muscles develop through deliberately engaging with manageable discomfort. This principle is embodied in a practice that might be called daily discomfort, intentionally doing something slightly uncomfortable each day as a way to build your capacity for challenging situations. This doesn't mean engaging in extreme hardship or unnecessary suffering. Rather, it involves choosing small challenges that stretch your comfort zone in controlled ways. Examples might include having a difficult conversation you've been avoiding, attempting something you're not yet good at, speaking up in a meeting when you'd usually stay silent, or taking a cold shower for 30 seconds. The specific challenge matters less than the practice of voluntarily engaging with discomfort rather than avoiding it. This practice builds what psychologists call distress tolerance, the ability to experience uncomfortable emotions without being overwhelmed by them or needing to escape them. As this capacity grows, the discomfort that triggers procrastination becomes less threatening. You develop confidence in your ability to handle whatever arises, reducing the need for avoidance behaviors. The key is consistency rather than intensity. A small daily challenge builds more psychological strength than an occasional extreme experience. It's the regular practice of choosing discomfort that gradually rewires your brain's response to challenge. This approach has been popularized by figures like David Goggins, who advocates doing something difficult every day to callous the mind against discomfort. While his specific methods might be extreme for many people, the underlying principle is sound. voluntary exposure to manageable discomfort builds psychological resilience over time. Implementing this practice involves identifying one small comfort zone challenge each day and completing it regardless of how you feel. The focus isn't on the specific outcome, but on the act of pushing through resistance. Over time, this builds a sense of agency, the belief that you can influence your actions and environment rather than being at the mercy of external circumstances or internal impulses. All of these practices, trigger awareness, the 5-minute start, deliberate imperfection, time boxing, and daily discomfort, contribute to a fundamental shift in mindset from perfectionism to progress orientation. This shift represents the essence of mental mastery. A progress mindset focuses on forward movement rather than flawless execution. It values learning over looking good, growth over certainty, and action over rumination. It recognizes that mastery comes not from occasional perfect performance, but from consistent engagement and willingness to learn from mistakes. To cultivate this mindset, consider implementing a daily progress reflection. Each evening, ask yourself, what did I move forward today, even slightly? What did I learn from something that didn't go as planned? What small action can I take tomorrow to continue this progress? This reflection trains your brain to notice and value incremental improvement rather than fixating on gaps between current reality and an idealized perfect state. It reinforces the compounding principle we explored earlier. Small daily progress accumulates into significant transformation over time. The progress mindset is particularly powerful because it creates a virtuous cycle. When you focus on progress, you're more likely to start tasks, addressing procrastination, and more accepting of imperfect results, addressing perfectionism. This leads to more action and learning, which creates more progress, reinforcing the mindset further. This cycle stands in stark contrast to the perfectionism-procrastination cycle, where high standards lead to avoidance, which prevents progress, which reinforces the belief that you're not capable, which increases the perceived threat of failure, which triggers more avoidance. By consistently practicing progress orientation, you gradually rewire these self-defeating patterns. You develop what psychologist Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. This belief reduces the fear of failure that underlies both procrastination and perfectionism, as mistakes become opportunities for learning rather than evidence of inadequacy. The mental mastery practices we've explored aren't about achieving a state of perpetual motivation or eliminating all resistance to challenging tasks. Such a state probably doesn't exist for most humans. Rather, these practices are about developing reliable ways to act effectively even when motivation is low and resistance is high. This distinction is crucial. Many people wait to feel motivated before taking action, not realizing that motivation often follows action rather than preceding it. The mentally masterful individual has learned to start without motivation, knowing that engagement often generates its own energy and momentum. Similarly, mentally masterful individuals don't expect to eliminate the discomfort associated with challenging tasks. Instead, they develop the capacity to act despite discomfort, recognizing that growth happens at the edge of comfort and that temporary discomfort is often the price of long-term progress. This capacity to act effectively regardless of emotional state represents true freedom. It means your actions are determined by your values and goals rather than by fleeting feelings or automatic avoidance patterns. It means you can pursue what matters to you even when the path involves challenge or uncertainty. Developing this capacity doesn't happen overnight. Like all the transformations we've explored in this book, it comes through consistent small actions that gradually reshape your mental landscape. Each time you apply the 5-minute rule to start a difficult task, each time you practice deliberate imperfection, each time you engage with a small daily discomfort, you're strengthening the neural pathways that support effective action. Over time, these pathways become the path of least resistance. Starting becomes easier than avoiding. Progress becomes more compelling than perfection. Action becomes more natural than rumination. What once required conscious effort becomes increasingly automatic, not because the tasks themselves become easier, but because your capacity to engage with challenge has grown. This is the essence of mental mastery, not the absence of difficulty, but the developed capacity to move through difficulty toward what matters. It's the ability to direct your mind rather than being directed by it, to choose your actions based on their alignment with your goals rather than their alignment with your momentary comfort. With this capacity, all the other practices we've explored in this book, daily reflection, micro-learning, mindfulness, growth monetization, become more accessible and effective. Mental mastery is the meta skill that enables all other skills, the foundation upon which all other growth is built. And the beautiful thing is that it develops through the same principle we've seen throughout. Small daily actions, consistently applied, leading to remarkable transformation over time. You don't need extraordinary willpower or dramatic lifestyle changes. You just need simple practices, applied regularly, with patience for the compounding effect to work its magic. As we move into the next chapter, we'll explore how these principles have transformed real lives, not just in theory but in practice. You'll discover the stories of individuals who have applied these exact approaches to overcome significant challenges and achieve extraordinary results. Their journeys reveal not just what's possible, but also the specific paths they took to turn possibility into reality. What might surprise you most is not the magnitude of their achievements, but the simplicity of the daily actions that made those achievements possible. Chapter 8: Real Transformations. What separates those who achieve extraordinary results from those who merely dream about them? Is it raw talent, fortunate circumstances, privileged backgrounds? Or could it be something much simpler, something accessible to anyone willing to embrace it? Throughout this book, we've explored various principles and practices that can transform your life through small daily actions. We've examined the compounding power of consistency, the clarifying effect of daily reflection, the accelerated growth that comes from micro-learning, the mental benefits of easy mindfulness, the financial returns of personal development, and the psychological techniques for overcoming internal resistance. These principles are powerful in theory, but do they actually work in practice? Can ordinary people really achieve extraordinary results through such simple means? Or are these just appealing ideas that fall apart when confronted with the messy reality of real life? To answer these questions, we need to look beyond theories and studies to examine actual transformations, real people who have applied these principles and experienced remarkable results. By studying their journeys, we can see not just what's possible, but also the specific mechanisms that turn possibility into reality. What's particularly instructive about these transformations is that they weren't accomplished through secret knowledge, rare talents, or exceptional circumstances. They were achieved through the consistent application of the very principles we've been discussing throughout this book. These individuals aren't superhuman. They've simply mastered the art of showing up daily for what matters most. Let's begin with a writer whose work has influenced millions of people around the world, helping them understand the power of small habits. Before he became a household name in the personal development space, he was just a regular person with a blog that almost nobody read. His transformation illustrates perfectly how tiny, consistent actions can compound into extraordinary success. In college, this individual was a promising baseball player with dreams of athletic achievement, but a catastrophic injury shattered those dreams overnight. During his long recovery, he became fascinated with the question of how small improvements accumulate over time. This interest wasn't just academic, it was deeply personal. His rehabilitation depended on making tiny improvements each day that would eventually restore his functionality. This experience planted the seeds for what would later become his life's work. After college, he started a simple blog where he would share his thoughts on habits, decision-making, and continuous improvement. At first, almost no one read his work. He wasn't an established expert. He didn't have connections in the publishing world. He was just a guy with some ideas and a commitment to share them consistently. His approach was methodical. He committed to publishing one high-quality article every Monday and Thursday without fail. Not when inspiration struck. Not when he felt like it. Every Monday and Thursday, regardless of circumstances, a new article would appear. This consistency was the foundation of everything that followed. By showing up twice a week, every week, he gradually improved his writing skills. Each article was a little better than the last. Each piece reached a few more people. Each idea was a little more refined. He didn't just write, he studied. He immersed himself in research about habits, psychology, neuroscience, and behavioral change. He experimented with different habit formation techniques in his own life and documented the results. He became his own laboratory for the ideas he was developing. For years, this pattern continued: 2 articles per week, continuous learning, personal experimentation, gradual improvement. From the outside, it might have looked like nothing dramatic was happening. There were no overnight successes, no viral hits, no sudden breakthroughs, just consistent, high-quality work accumulating over time. But something powerful was happening beneath the surface. His audience was growing, not explosively but steadily. His ideas were becoming sharper and more distinctive. His writing was becoming clearer and more compelling. His authority in the field was gradually establishing itself. After several years of this consistent practice, he had built a substantial email list of dedicated readers. He had developed a distinctive philosophy of habit formation. He had accumulated dozens of powerful stories and examples that illustrated his principles, and he had earned the trust of an audience that valued his insights. Only then did he begin work on a book that would eventually become one of the best-selling and most influential personal development books of the past decade. That book, Atomic Habits, has now sold millions of copies worldwide and transformed countless lives. Its author, James Clear, has become one of the most respected voices in the field of habit formation and personal improvement. What's remarkable about this transformation is not that it happened, but how it happened. There was no single breakthrough moment, no lucky break that changed everything overnight. There was simply a commitment to showing up consistently, improving incrementally, and trusting the compounding process over time. Clear's approach embodied all the principles we've discussed in this book. He leveraged the compounding power of small improvements, Chapter 2, reflected on and documented his experiences, Chapter 3, engaged in continuous learning about his field, Chapter 4, maintained focus and presence in his work, Chapter 5, gradually monetized his growing expertise, Chapter 6, and overcame the resistance that inevitably arises during any long-term project, Chapter 7. His story demonstrates that remarkable transformations don't require remarkable circumstances. They require remarkable consistency. The daily decision to show up, do the work, and trust the process eventually creates results that appear extraordinary from the outside, but were actually the predictable outcome of simple principles applied consistently over time. While James Clear's transformation occurred primarily in the intellectual and professional realms, our next example demonstrates how these same principles can create extraordinary physical and mental transformation. Imagine someone who has hit rock bottom, severely overweight, deeply depressed, working a dead-end job, and seeing no way forward. This was the starting point for a man who would eventually become known as the toughest man alive and an icon of mental fortitude. This individual didn't start with advantages. He struggled in school due to learning disabilities. He grew up in a challenging environment. He had developed self-defeating habits and a negative self-image. By his own admission, he was soft, undisciplined, and afraid. His transformation began with a moment of brutal self-honesty. Looking in the mirror, he confronted the reality of who he had become and decided it was unacceptable. But unlike many people who have such moments of clarity only to return to old patterns days later, he developed a system to ensure his commitment would last. That system centered around what he called the accountability mirror. Each morning, he would stand before the mirror and have an honest conversation with himself about his goals, his actions, and the gap between them. This wasn't gentle self-talk. It was a harsh, unfiltered assessment of his efforts and results. This daily practice of radical self-accountability became the foundation for everything that followed. It forced him to confront his excuses, acknowledge his failures, and commit to specific actions each day. It was a form of daily reflection, Chapter 3, with an intensity suited to his personality and goals. Alongside this reflection practice, he established a simple but challenging physical routine. He began by running, not marathons or even miles, just running until he couldn't anymore, then walking, then running again. Each day, he would push a little further than the day before. These weren't dramatic improvements, sometimes just a few more steps, but they were consistent. What made his approach distinctive was his deliberate embrace of discomfort. While most people try to avoid pain, he sought it out in controlled doses. He would intentionally choose the harder option in daily decisions, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, running in the heat of the day rather than the cool morning, adding one more repetition when his muscles were screaming to stop. This wasn't masochism, it was strategic discomfort designed to strengthen his mind. He understood intuitively what we discussed in Chapter 7, that mental toughness, like physical strength, develops through progressive overload. By voluntarily exposing himself to manageable discomfort each day, he was building psychological calluses that would allow him to withstand greater challenges. Over time, these daily practices transformed both his body and mind. He lost over 100 pounds. He developed extraordinary endurance. He qualified for and completed Navy SEAL training, widely considered one of the most mentally and physically demanding programs in the world. He went on to become an ultramarathoner, completing some of the most grueling races on the planet. David Goggins transformed from an overweight, depressed exterminator to a Navy SEAL, ultra-endurance athlete, and best-selling author. His methods were extreme, but the principles behind them were the same ones we've been discussing: consistent daily action, gradual progression, deliberate discomfort for growth, and regular self-reflection. What's particularly instructive about Goggins' transformation is how it illustrates the power of identity change through consistent action. He didn't just change what he did, he changed who he was by changing what he did consistently. Each day of showing up, pushing through discomfort, and refusing to make excuses gradually rewired his self-concept until the disciplined, determined person he was becoming felt more authentic than the person he had been. This process of identity change through consistent action is available to everyone. You don't need to adopt Goggins' extreme methods to benefit from the principle. Small, consistent actions that align with the person you want to become will gradually reshape your identity in that direction. The key is consistency, showing up day after day, especially when you don't feel like it. While James Clear and David Goggins offer powerful examples of transformation through consistent action, our next example demonstrates how even a single, simple technique applied daily can create remarkable change. Imagine someone whose life is falling apart, financially struggling, with a failing marriage, battling alcohol dependence, and so depressed they can barely get out of bed in the morning. This was the reality for a woman who would eventually become a globally recognized motivational speaker and best-selling author. Her transformation began with a simple observation: the gap between intention and action. She would set her alarm with the intention of getting up early to change her life, but when the alarm rang, she would hit snooze and fall back into the same patterns. She realized that in that moment between intention and action, her mind would talk her out of doing what she knew she should do. This insight led her to develop a remarkably simple technique. When her alarm went off and she felt the urge to hit snooze, she would count backwards from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then immediately move physically, throwing off the covers and standing up before her mind could generate excuses. This technique, counting down from 5 and then taking immediate physical action, became her tool for interrupting the pattern of hesitation and overthinking that had kept her stuck. She began using it not just for getting out of bed, but for any action she was resisting: making difficult phone calls, starting work projects, exercising, having important conversations. What makes this technique so effective is that it works with how the brain actually functions. The countdown gives the prefrontal cortex, the action-oriented part of the brain, a chance to activate before the limbic system, the emotion-driven part, can generate fear and resistance. The immediate physical movement leverages the body-mind connection, using physical action to drive mental commitment. By applying this simple technique consistently throughout her days, she gradually reclaimed control of her actions from her momentary feelings and impulses. She started getting up when her alarm rang. She began tackling difficult tasks instead of avoiding them. She made the phone calls she'd been dreading. She took the small actions that would eventually lead to big changes. Over time, these consistent small actions accumulated into significant life changes. She stopped drinking. She rebuilt her marriage. She developed a successful career as a speaker and author. She went from being deeply depressed to helping millions of others overcome their own challenges. Mel Robbins transformed her life with what became known as the 5-second rule, a simple technique for bridging the gap between intention and action. What's remarkable about her story is not the complexity of her method, but its simplicity. A basic countdown followed by immediate action, applied consistently across various situations, was enough to create profound change. This illustrates a crucial truth about transformation. Sometimes the most powerful techniques are the simplest. Complex systems and elaborate methods often fail because they're too difficult to implement consistently. Simple techniques that you actually use every day will outperform sophisticated approaches that you use sporadically or abandon entirely. Robbins' experience also demonstrates the power of what psychologists call implementation intentions, specific plans for when and how you'll take action toward your goals. By creating a clear trigger, the countdown, linked to immediate action, she bypassed the hesitation and deliberation that often prevent action. This simple form of mental automation reduced the friction between intention and behavior, making consistent action more likely. What's particularly valuable about the 5-second rule is its versatility. It can be applied to virtually any situation where you know what to do but struggle to actually do it, from getting out of bed to making sales calls to starting difficult conversations. This makes it a powerful tool for overcoming the internal resistance we discussed in Chapter 7. Looking across these 3 transformations, James Clear's journey from unknown blogger to best-selling author, David Goggins' evolution from overweight and depressed to ultra-endurance athlete, and Mel Robbins' path from struggling and depressed to successful author and speaker, we can identify several common threads that illuminate the true nature of lasting change. First, all 3 transformations began with a decision point, a moment of clarity when the individual recognized that their current path was unacceptable and committed to change. For Clear, it was the realization that his baseball career was over and he needed a new direction. For Goggins, it was the mirror moment when he confronted his physical condition and lack of discipline. For Robbins, it was the recognition that her life was spiraling downward and she needed to take control of her actions. These decision points weren't magical or mystical. They were moments of honest self-assessment followed by a commitment to specific action. What made them significant wasn't their emotional intensity, but the consistent action that followed them. Second, all 3 individuals established simple daily practices that they maintained with extraordinary consistency. Clear committed to publishing articles twice weekly without fail. Goggins developed a daily routine of physical challenges and self-accountability. Robbins implemented her countdown technique throughout each day to overcome hesitation and procrastination. The specific practices varied based on their goals and personalities, but the principle of daily consistency remained constant. None of them relied on occasional bursts of intense effort followed by long periods of inaction. They understood that sustainable transformation comes from regular practice, not sporadic heroics. Third, all 3 embraced incremental progress rather than expecting overnight transformation. Clear focused on making each article slightly better than the last. Goggins pushed himself a little further each day than he had the day before. Robbins used her technique to take small actions that gradually accumulated into significant life changes. This patience with the process, this willingness to trust that small improvements would compound over time, allowed them to persist when results weren't immediately visible. They understood that transformation often follows the pattern we discussed in Chapter 2, long periods of seemingly minimal progress, followed by breakthrough moments when the accumulated changes suddenly become apparent. Fourth, all three developed systems to overcome the inevitable resistance that arises during any significant change effort. Clear established a non-negotiable publishing schedule that didn't depend on motivation. Goggins created his accountability mirror practice to confront his excuses head-on. Robbins designed her countdown technique specifically to bypass the hesitation that had derailed her previous attempts at change. These systems acknowledge the reality that motivation fluctuates and resistance is inevitable. Rather than relying on willpower or waiting for inspiration, they created structures and techniques that enabled consistent action regardless of their momentary feelings. Finally, all three transformed not just their circumstances, but their identities through consistent action. Clear became a writer and habits expert by writing consistently about habits. Goggins became an endurance athlete by consistently pushing his endurance limits. Robbins became someone who takes action despite fear by consistently taking action despite fear. This identity transformation is perhaps the most powerful aspect of their journeys. By consistently acting in alignment with the person they wanted to become, they gradually became that person. Their actions shaped their self-concept, which in turn made those actions feel more natural and authentic, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of positive change. What's most encouraging about these transformations is that they weren't dependent on exceptional circumstances or innate talents. They resulted from the application of principles and practices that are available to anyone willing to implement them consistently. You don't need James Clear's writing ability, David Goggins' physical capacity, or Mel Robbins' speaking skills to apply the principles that drove their transformations. You just need to identify the daily actions that align with your goals, establish systems to ensure consistency, embrace incremental progress, prepare for and overcome resistance, and allow your identity to evolve through your consistent actions. The formula is remarkably consistent across diverse goals and personalities. Decide what matters, take small actions daily, trust the compounding process, and persist through resistance. This simplicity is what makes transformation accessible to anyone willing to embrace it. As you reflect on these transformations, consider what your own transformation story might look like. What daily practices would form its foundation? What systems would ensure your consistency? How would you measure and appreciate incremental progress? What techniques would help you overcome resistance? How might your identity evolve through consistent action? Your transformation won't look exactly like anyone else's. It will be shaped by your unique goals, circumstances, and personality. But the underlying principles remain constant. Small actions, consistently applied, will compound into remarkable results over time. The individuals we've examined in this chapter aren't exceptional because of who they were when they started. They're exceptional because of what they did consistently over time. And that consistency, that commitment to showing up day after day for what matters, is available to anyone. As we move into our final chapter, we'll explore perhaps the most overlooked dimension of personal transformation, one that many high achievers neglect to their detriment. We'll discover how the same principles of small daily actions can transform not just your skills, mindset, and career, but also the quality and depth of your connections with others. What if the ultimate reward for all your personal growth efforts isn't just what you achieve, but who you become able to connect with and how you impact their lives? Chapter 9: Meaningful Connections. Throughout this book, we've explored how small daily actions can transform your life across multiple dimensions. We've seen how consistent habits can compound into remarkable skills, how brief reflection can clarify your thinking, how micro-learning can build expertise, how simple mindfulness practices can enhance your mental well-being, how personal growth can translate into professional success, and how mental mastery can overcome internal barriers. These approaches have undeniable power to change your life from the inside out. But there's a dimension of transformation we haven't yet fully explored, one that might ultimately prove the most significant of all. Imagine developing extraordinary skills but having no one to share them with. Picture achieving remarkable success but celebrating alone. Envision growing into your best self but having no one who truly sees and appreciates that growth. Something essential would be missing, wouldn't it? Humans are fundamentally social creatures. Our brains are wired for connection. From our earliest moments, we seek attachment, recognition, and understanding from others. This need for meaningful connection isn't a weakness or a distraction from personal development. It's an integral part of what makes us human. Yet in our individualistic culture, personal growth is often framed as a solitary journey. We're encouraged to focus on our own goals, our own habits, our own success. The implicit message is that relationships are secondary, something to attend to after you've optimized yourself. This perspective misses a profound truth. Personal growth and interpersonal connection aren't separate domains competing for your attention. They're deeply intertwined aspects of a fulfilling life that can and should reinforce each other. The most meaningful personal development enhances your relationships, and the most significant relationships support your growth. This integration of personal and interpersonal development represents the ultimate form of life on easy mode, where your efforts to improve yourself naturally strengthen your connections with others, and those connections in turn accelerate your personal growth, creating a virtuous cycle of expanding capability and deepening relationships. But how exactly does this virtuous cycle work? How do the personal practices we've explored throughout this book translate into richer, more meaningful connections? And how can we be intentional about fostering this integration? The answer begins with understanding how personal growth naturally enhances your capacity for connection. Many of the practices we've discussed don't just improve you in isolation, they directly develop qualities that strengthen relationships. Consider mindfulness, which we explored in Chapter 5. When you practice being present with your own experience, you're simultaneously developing the capacity to be present with others. The same quality of attention that allows you to notice your own thoughts and feelings without judgment enables you to truly listen to another person without immediately formulating your response or filtering their words through your preconceptions. This kind of presence is increasingly rare in our distracted world. When you can offer someone your full attention, even for just a few minutes, you're giving them something precious. You're creating a space where they feel seen, heard, and valued. This quality of attention forms the foundation for meaningful connection. A simple daily practice that leverages this connection is what we might call full presence listening. Each day, commit to giving one person your complete, undivided attention for 5 minutes. Put away your phone, turn away from screens, and focus entirely on them. Listen not just to their words, but to the emotions and needs beneath those words. Notice their facial expressions, tone of voice, and body language. Resist the urge to formulate your response while they're speaking. Just be fully present with them. This practice might seem trivial, just 5 minutes of listening, but applied consistently, it can transform your relationships. People intuitively recognize when they're being truly heard versus when someone is just waiting for their turn to speak. The experience of being fully received creates trust, openness, and connection that deepens over time. The daily reflection practice from Chapter 3 similarly enhances your relational capacity. When you regularly examine your own thoughts, feelings, and reactions, you develop greater emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize, understand, and manage emotions in yourself and others. This emotional awareness is crucial for navigating the complexities of relationships. For example, journaling about a conflict might help you recognize that your anger stemmed more from fear of rejection than from what the other person actually did. This insight allows you to approach the situation with greater clarity and less reactivity. You can address the real issue rather than getting caught in a cycle of blame and defensiveness. Over time, this growing emotional intelligence enables more authentic communication. You can express your needs and feelings clearly without attacking or withdrawing. You can remain present during difficult conversations rather than being hijacked by emotional reactions. You can recognize and respond to others' emotional needs rather than just their words. These capabilities don't just make you a better person in some abstract sense. They make you a better friend, partner, colleague, and community member. They enable the kind of honest, supportive communication that forms the basis for deep connection. The microlearning practice from Chapter 4 also enhances your relational capacity in less obvious but equally important ways. When you consistently expand your knowledge and perspectives, you become a more interesting and engaging person to connect with. You bring fresh ideas, insights, and questions to your interactions. You can bridge different worlds and introduce people to new concepts. Moreover, the habit of curiosity that drives effective learning transfers naturally to curiosity about others. The same interest that makes you want to understand a new concept can be directed toward understanding another person's experience, perspective, or expertise. This genuine curiosity, this desire to understand rather than to judge or categorize, creates openings for authentic connection. Even the mental mastery practices from Chapter 7 enhance your relational capabilities. When you develop the ability to act consistently despite discomfort or resistance, you become more reliable in your relationships. You can show up for others even when it's difficult. You can have challenging conversations rather than avoiding them. You can maintain boundaries and commitments rather than letting them slide when they become inconvenient. This reliability builds trust, the foundation of all meaningful relationships. When others know they can count on you, they feel safe being vulnerable, sharing their true thoughts and feelings, and investing in the relationship. Without this basic trust, deeper connection remains elusive. What all these examples illustrate is a fundamental principle. Working on yourself is not separate from working on your relationships. The qualities you develop through personal growth, presence, emotional intelligence, curiosity, reliability, directly enhance your capacity for meaningful connection. As you become your best self, you naturally become better at relating to others. But this integration works in the other direction as well. Just as personal growth enhances relationships, meaningful connections accelerate personal growth. The longest-running study on happiness and well-being, the Harvard Study of Adult Development, has followed participants for over 80 years. Its most consistent finding? The quality of our relationships is the strongest predictor of both happiness and health throughout life. This finding isn't just about the emotional comfort that relationships provide. Supportive relationships actually enhance our ability to grow and develop in all areas of life. When we feel securely connected to others, we're more willing to take risks, explore new possibilities, and persist through challenges, all essential elements of personal growth. Research on the Michelangelo effect in relationships illustrates this dynamic. Just as the sculptor Michelangelo claimed to release the ideal form already within the marble, partners in supportive relationships help sculpt each other into their ideal selves through encouragement, feedback, and belief in each other's potential. This mutual growth support creates a context where personal development flourishes. Given this powerful integration between personal growth and meaningful connection, how can we be more intentional about fostering both simultaneously? How can we ensure that our self-improvement efforts enhance rather than detract from our relationships, and that our relationships support rather than hinder our growth? One powerful approach is to transform solitary growth practices into shared experiences. Instead of pursuing personal development in isolation, look for opportunities to involve others in ways that create mutual benefit. For instance, if you've established a daily walking habit for physical well-being, consider inviting a friend, family member, or colleague to join you occasionally. The walk becomes not just exercise, but an opportunity for conversation and connection. You're simultaneously investing in your health and your relationship. Similarly, the micro-learning practice can become a source of connection when you regularly share what you're learning with others who might find it valuable. This sharing isn't about showing off your knowledge. It's about offering something potentially useful or interesting to someone else. It might be as simple as sending an article to a colleague working on a related project, or discussing a new concept with a friend who shares your interests. This approach transforms what could be a self-centered pursuit, accumulating knowledge for your own benefit, into a generous act that strengthens connection. It also deepens your own learning, as explaining concepts to others requires greater clarity and understanding than simply consuming information for yourself. Even practices that seem inherently solitary, like journaling or meditation, can enhance relationships when you occasionally reflect on what you're learning about yourself and selectively share relevant insights with those close to you. This sharing creates openness and invites others into your growth journey, fostering deeper understanding and connection. Beyond integrating others into your existing practices, consider establishing habits specifically designed to strengthen relationships. Just as you might commit to daily reflection or learning, you can commit to small daily actions that nurture important connections. For example, you might establish a habit of sending one appreciative message each day to someone in your life, acknowledging something you value about them or expressing gratitude for something they've done. This takes just a minute or two, but creates moments of connection and positive emotion that strengthen relationships over time. Or you might commit to a weekly check-in with important people in your life, a phone call with a family member, a coffee with a mentor, a walk with a friend. These regular touchpoints ensure that relationships remain nurtured despite busy schedules and competing priorities. The key is to approach these relationship practices with the same intentionality and consistency that you bring to other personal development efforts. Just as skills develop through regular practice, relationships deepen through regular investment of attention and care. This integration of personal and interpersonal growth extends beyond close relationships to your broader network and community. The same principles that strengthen intimate connections can enhance your professional relationships and community involvement. In professional contexts, the habit of consistent value creation, regularly offering help, information, or connections without immediate expectation of return, builds a network of goodwill and support that can prove invaluable over time. This isn't manipulative networking, it's genuine contribution that happens to create connection as a byproduct. For instance, you might establish a habit of reaching out to one professional contact each week just to check in, share a relevant resource, or offer assistance with a project they're working on. Over time, these small acts of connection and contribution compound into a robust network of mutually supportive relationships. This approach aligns with research on weak ties in professional networks, connections that aren't close friends, but are more than mere acquaintances. These relationships often provide the most valuable opportunities because they bridge different social worlds, exposing you to ideas, opportunities, and connections that wouldn't be available within your immediate circle. By consistently nurturing these connections through small acts of value and attention, you create a network that not only advances your career, but also enriches your life with diverse perspectives and possibilities. Beyond individual relationships, meaningful connection extends to community involvement, finding or creating groups of like-minded individuals who support each other's growth. These communities provide accountability, encouragement, shared knowledge, and a sense of belonging that accelerates personal development. The structure of such communities can vary widely, from formal mastermind groups that meet regularly to discuss goals and challenges, to online forums where people share progress and insights, to informal circles of friends who support each other's growth efforts. What matters isn't the specific format, but the shared commitment to growth and mutual support. Participating in such communities requires vulnerability, a willingness to share both successes and struggles, to ask for help when needed, and to offer support to others. This vulnerability might feel uncomfortable initially, especially if you're accustomed to pursuing growth independently, but it creates the conditions for deeper connection and accelerated development that wouldn't be possible in isolation. A simple way to begin is by sharing your growth goals with a few trusted individuals and asking for their support. This might involve regular check-ins where you report on progress, discuss challenges, and receive encouragement. Or it might mean joining an existing group focused on an area you're developing, whether that's a skill, a creative pursuit, or a personal quality. The accountability that comes from such arrangements dramatically increases the likelihood of consistent action. Research has shown that publicly committing to goals and regularly reporting on progress significantly improves follow-through compared to keeping goals private. The social dimension doesn't just make growth more enjoyable, it makes it more effective. As valuable as all these approaches are, perhaps the most profound integration of personal growth and meaningful connection comes from recognizing that relationships themselves represent a domain for intentional development. Just as you can deliberately improve your skills, knowledge, or mental habits, you can deliberately develop your capacity for connection. This development involves cultivating specific relationship skills and qualities: empathy, communication, conflict resolution, vulnerability, boundaries, forgiveness, through consistent practice and reflection. It means approaching relationships not as fixed entities that either work or don't, but as living systems that can be nurtured and strengthened through intentional effort. For example, you might practice expressing appreciation more frequently and specifically, noticing and acknowledging the qualities and actions you value in others. Or you might work on improving how you handle disagreements, learning to express your perspective clearly while remaining open to others' views. Or you might develop greater comfort with vulnerability, gradually sharing more of your authentic thoughts and feelings with trusted others. These relational skills develop through the same process as any other capability: intentional practice, reflection on results, and progressive improvement over time. And like other forms of growth, small daily actions compound into significant transformation. A slightly more honest conversation today, a bit more attentive listening tomorrow, a moment of genuine appreciation the next day. These small investments accumulate into profoundly different relationships over months and years. What makes this domain of growth particularly powerful is that improvements here enhance every aspect of life. Better relationships don't just feel good, they create the conditions for greater success, resilience, health, and fulfillment across all domains. They are both a worthy end in themselves and a means to every other worthy end. This perspective transforms how we think about the return on investment for personal development efforts. While it's natural to measure growth in terms of skills acquired, goals achieved, or income increased, perhaps the ultimate ROI is the quality and depth of our connections with others. The Harvard study of adult development, which has followed participants for over 80 years, reached a striking conclusion about what predicts happiness and fulfillment throughout life. It wasn't career success, wealth, fame, or even physical health. It was the quality of relationships. As the study's director, Robert Waldinger, put it, "Good relationships keep us happier and healthier, period." This finding suggests that if our personal growth efforts aren't enhancing our capacity for meaningful connection, we may be optimizing for secondary outcomes while neglecting what matters most. The most impressive achievements ring hollow without people to share them with. The most polished skills bring limited fulfillment if they don't somehow serve or connect us with others. This isn't to say that individual development isn't valuable in its own right. It absolutely is. But its full value is realized when it flows into and enhances our relationships rather than competing with them. The most meaningful personal growth expands our capacity to connect, contribute, and care for others. In practical terms, this means occasionally stepping back from your growth efforts to ask, How is this development affecting my relationships? Is it creating more openness, understanding, and connection, or is it inadvertently causing distance, comparison, or neglect? Are my growth priorities aligned with what matters most in my relationships? It also means being intentional about directing your growing capabilities towards strengthening connections. The increased focus you develop through mindfulness practice can be directed toward being more present with loved ones. The insights gained through reflection can inform how you communicate and resolve conflicts. The knowledge acquired through learning can be shared in ways that create connection and mutual growth. This integration, where personal development enhances relationships and relationships support personal development, represents the highest expression of life on easy mode. It's where individual effort creates collective benefit, and collective support amplifies individual growth. It's where the virtuous cycle of expanding capability and deepening connection creates a life that is not just successful, but deeply fulfilling. As we conclude this exploration of how small daily actions can transform your life, remember that the ultimate measure of that transformation isn't just what you achieve or who you become as an individual. It's also how your growth enhances your capacity to connect meaningfully with others and contribute to their lives. The daily habits we've discussed throughout this book, reflection, learning, mindfulness, consistent action, mental mastery, all develop qualities that can strengthen your relationships when directed outward with intention and care. And those strengthened relationships, in turn, create the support, accountability, and sense of belonging that accelerate your continued growth. This integration doesn't happen automatically. It requires conscious attention to how your personal practices affect your relationships and deliberate efforts to involve others in your growth journey where appropriate. It means recognizing relationships themselves as a domain for intentional development and investing in connection with the same consistency you bring to other growth areas. But when this integration occurs, when personal and interpersonal development reinforce each other, you experience a form of flourishing that neither could create alone. You discover that the most meaningful growth isn't just about becoming your best self, but about becoming your best self in relation to others. You find that the small daily actions that transform your individual life can simultaneously transform your relationships, creating ripples of positive change that extend far beyond yourself. And perhaps most importantly, you realize that in the end, it's not the skills you've mastered, the knowledge you've acquired, or even the internal peace you've cultivated that brings the deepest fulfillment. It's the moments of genuine connection with others, the shared joy, the mutual understanding, the collaborative growth, the love expressed and received that make life truly rich and meaningful. This is the ultimate reward of the journey we've undertaken together. Not just a more capable, centered, and successful individual, but a more connected, contributing, and fulfilled human being. Not just life on easy mode for yourself, but a life that makes things a little easier, a little better, for those around you as well. As you move forward from these pages into continued practice and growth, remember that the small daily actions that transform your life have the potential to transform your relationships too. The consistency that builds skills can also build connection. The attention that enhances your awareness can also enhance your empathy. The courage that overcomes internal resistance can also overcome barriers to authentic communication. In the integration of personal growth and meaningful connection, you'll find not just success, but significance, not just achievement, but fulfillment, not just a better life, but a life better lived, with and for others. And in that integration lies perhaps the greatest transformation of all, from success to significance, from achievement to meaning, from self-improvement to a life of contribution and connection. This is the true promise of life on easy mode, not just easier progress toward your goals, but a deeper experience of what makes life worth living. Not just a more efficient path to success, but a more meaningful journey shared with others who matter to you. Not just a better version of yourself, but better relationships that bring out the best in everyone involved. May your small daily actions create not just personal transformation, but ripples of positive change in all your relationships. And may those relationships, in turn, support and accelerate your continued growth, creating a virtuous cycle of expanding capability and deepening connection that enriches not just your life, but the lives of all those you touch. Yet even with these powerful insights, many readers discover there's a hidden obstacle preventing them from fully implementing what they've learned. The traditional approach to achievement often undermines the very systems that make transformation possible. What if the secret to making everything in this book work seamlessly lies not in better goals, but in an entirely different approach? For those ready to take their transformation to the next level and ensure lasting results, the audiobook Small Actions, Infinite Results, Create Systems Not Goals reveals the missing piece that turns occasional success into inevitable achievement. Tap the center of the video now to continue your transformation journey.